Senior-most member KC administers oath to newly elected HOR members, 240 out of 275 HOR members serving as first-time MPs. Balendra Shah endorsed as RSP's parliamentary party leader, likely to be appointed as the Prime Minister tomorrow. Bird flu outbreak hits thousands of poultry in Nepal's eastern Koshi province. Authorities enforce strict controls. Israel claims of killing Iran's Navy chief overseeing Strait of Hormuz blockade. Iran does not intend to negotiate, says its foreign minister. White House says Trump's meeting with Xi set for May. Visit to China to be the first by a U.S. president since 2017. And Army and police secure second straight wins in PM Cup one-day cricket. Gandaki and Bagmati both defeated by 7 wickets. Hello there, I'm Smitu Gising Thamang and this is NTV World Primetime News. We're coming to you live from Kathmandu at 1900 hours Nepal time. Elsewhere, it's 13:15 in London, 22:15 in Tokyo, and just after midnight in Sydney. Now the details. Newly elected members of the Nepal's House of Representatives took the oath of office in secrecy today. Senior-most member of the House of Representatives, Arjun Narsingh Kesi of Nepali Congress, administered the oath of office in secrecy to fellow HOR members amidst a ceremony today. The oath of office in secrecy ceremony of the members of the House of Representatives was held at the multi-purpose hall of the newly constructed Parliament building in Singadarbar. President Ramchandra Paudel had administered the oath of office in secrecy to Kesi on Wednesday. Arrangements related to taking oath of office in secrecy are specified in the Article 99 and 91(5) of the Nepal's Constitution and the Clause 75 of the House of Representatives Member Election Act 2074. In the election of members of the House of Representatives held on March 5, Rashtriya Swatantra Party came first with 182 seats, while Nepali Congress stood second with 38, CP and UML won 25 seats, Nepali Communist Party NCP 17, Shram Sanskriti Party 7 and Rashtriya Prajatantra Party RPP won 5 seats. Meanwhile, most of the HOR members who took oath of office in secrecy today are new faces. Most of the parliamentarians elected on March 5 are new faces, while limited members of some political parties have been elected twice or thrice times in the parliament. Except for the leaders of Rashtriya Swatantra Party RSP, Nepali Communist Party NCP and the Shram Sanskriti Party, the main leaders of other parties who participated in the recently held election will not feature in parliament this time. A total of 14 parliamentarians have been re-elected from RSP, which has secured a total of 182 seats in the law-making body this time. Among the 38 MPs elected from the Nepali Congress in the election, 8 members have been re-elected. Balendra Shah has been elected parliamentary party leader of Rashtriya Swatantra Party RSP. A central committee meeting of the party held today unanimously elected Shah as its parliamentary party leader. A proposal was represented, I'll come back to this again. A proposal was presented by RSP chairperson Rabi Lamichhane to elect party's senior leader Shah as the parliamentary party leader in the meeting. The proposal was passed unanimously, according to RSP spokesperson Manish Jha. Shah is likely to take the oath as Prime Minister tomorrow, following his endorsement as parliamentary party leader by his party meeting. CP and UML chairperson KP Sharma Oli has directed lawmakers elected from his party to perform with determination in favor of the country and the people, being not disappointed from the recent poll results. At a program organized at the party's central office in Chasal of Lalitpur, immediately after the newly elected House of Representatives members took the oath of office in secrecy, Oli directed his parliamentarians in both the HOR and National Assembly to work keeping the public interest and nation building at the center. The former Prime Minister recalled his works in favor of the country and the people and directed lawmakers to work to strengthen the country's path to prosperity. Time for a short break now. We shall be back with more updates. Do stay tuned. You're watching Primetime News on NTV World, and now the remaining updates. 275 lawmakers near supermajority and a public that has run out of patience. Today at Singapore, Nepal's new members of parliament took their oath of office, but as the ceremony ends, the scrutiny begins. Our reporter Sabika Shrestha brings you a closer observation.
The faces are new. The expectations are unprecedented. After a landslide victory, this parliament carries the weight of a generation that bypassed traditional power blocks to demand a functional state. With a 182-seat majority, the era of coalition excuses is over. The new government, to be led by Prime Minister Balendra Shah, no longer faces the hurdle of parliamentary numbers, only the hurdle of delivery. But the transition from street activism to the halls of Singapore is fraught with structural traps. Analysts are already setting the clock. While the streets celebrate a historic shift, the transition from local to national power remains under a shadow of doubt. Public sentiment reflects both hope and accountability. A young voter in Kathmandu remarked, "Unlike the passive electorates of the past, this generation of voters remain in a state of constant watch."
के राम्रो काम गर्नुहुन्छ कि भन्ने हो। यदि जनताको हितमा काम भयो भने त खासमा प्रतिपक्ष त हामी जनता पनि प्रतिपक्षमै हो नि त। अब जनताको हितमै काम भयो भने चाहिँ त्यो नहोला भन्न सक्यो हैन। अब फेरि पनि पहिलाकै रिपिट भयो भने चाहिँ हामी पनि प्रतिपक्ष नै हो। उहाँहरु अब बाँकी रहेको उम्मेदवारहरु पनि जो हुनुहुन्छ सांसदमा अब उहाँहरु पनि प्रतिपक्ष नै हो।
The oath taken today is more than a formality. It is a contract. In a nation where the old guard was dismantled in weeks, the new wave knows its tenure is tied to immediate, measurable change.
A total of 7,231 disaster incidents have occurred across Nepal in the past 11 months. According to the country's National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority, 479 individuals have died and 1,800 injured in those incidents that affected 13,098 families. Of the disaster, 3,480 were fire incidents, 321 floods, 604 landslides, 442 heavy rains, 406 lightning strikes, and 600 snake bites. Similarly, there have been 279 forest fires, 451 storms, 504 wild animal attacks, 123 landslides, and 5 avalanches, according to the authority. There were 7 earthquakes, 2 hailstorms, and 2 boat capsizing incidents, while 1 each of strong winds and cold wave occurred. Local authorities have imposed strict restrictions on the movement of poultry and poultry products after thousands of chickens died across Nepal's eastern districts of Jhapa, Morang and Sunsari in a bird flu outbreak. Technical experts say delays in testing may have allowed the virus to spread rapidly across the 3 districts. Affected areas include Damak in Jhapa, Urlabari, Biratnagar, Sundarharaicha and Katahari in Morang, and Itahari sub-metropolitan city and Gadi rural municipality in Sunsari. Thousands of birds have been culled to contain the outbreak. The Biratnagar laboratory conducts only preliminary testing for avian influenza virus AIV, so samples must be sent to the central laboratory in Kathmandu to confirm highly pathogenic avian influenza HPAI. It is said reports from Kathmandu take up to 4 days, and in the meantime, lack of biosecurity measures at affected farms contributed to the rapid spread of the disease across the 3 districts. Following the outbreak, affected poultry farms have been sealed, and infected birds along with eggs, poultry feed, crates and cartons have been destroyed as part of containment efforts. Eastern Nepal possesses largely untapped tourism potential by its diverse geography and rich indigenous cultures. In recent days, Dhankuta, often referred to as the gateway to the mid-hills of Eastern Nepal, has been gaining popularity among visitors. The region emphasizes adventure and cultural tourism, with key destinations including Dharan, Dhankuta and Ilam. In recent years, the community homestay operated by the Athpaharia community in Siaule Sipting has emerged as a hub for culture, traditional cuisine and sustainable tourism. Guests are served locally grown rice, lentils and vegetables along with distinctive traditional dishes, the traditional drink tongba and radish pickle. Beyond cuisine, the local way of life itself serves as a major attraction. These hands-on activities add a meaningful and memorable dimension to the visit. The annual chariot procession of Setu Machindranath has kicked off from today in Kathmandu. The procession begins every year on the 8th day of Chaitra Shukla Ashtami of Nepali lunar calendar. The festival of Setu Machindranath, a deity revered by both Hindus and Buddhists, lasts for 5 days till the full moon. Machindranath is also worshipped as a god of good harvest and one who removes evil, protects from premature death and safeguards people from unrest and insecurity. On the first day of the festival, the idol was taken from Damal to Asan, while on the second day, tomorrow, it will be toured from Asan to Hanumantoka, and on the third day to Lagan in Kathmandu. People participate in the procession believing that worshipping Machindranath invites Goddess Lakshmi into their homes, bringing happiness, peace and prosperity. A short break now before we check out the international updates. Israel says it has killed an Iranian Navy chief overseeing the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's busiest oil shipping channels. Defense Minister Israel Katz says Alireza Tangsiri was directly responsible for the effective closure of the strait and has been blown up.
הלילה סיכל צה"ל בפעולה מדויקת וקטלנית את מפקד חיל הים של משמרות המהפכה טנגסירי יחד עם בכירי פיקוד חיל הים. האיש היה האחראי הישיר על פעולת הטרור של מיקוש וחסימת מצרי הורמוז לשיט פוצץ וסוכל.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says that Iran does not plan to negotiate with the United States after U.S. President Donald Trump said Washington had proposed a peace plan. Araghchi also added the Strait of Hormuz is closed only to enemies, with the Middle East war having all but shut the vital oil and gas shipping route.
تنگی هرمز از نظر ما بسته کامل نیست. بسته است فقط به روی دشمنان ما. طبیعی هم است، ما در شرایط جنگی هستیم، منطقه جنگی هست، دلیلی نداره به کشتی‌های دشمنان خودمون اجازه عبور بدیم و متحدینشون، ولی برای بقیه آزاد هست. البته آزاد که هست، خب خود اونها کشتی‌ها معمولاً اجتناب میکنن به دلیل ناامنی که وجود داره. بعضی از اونها شرکت‌های بیمه‌شون پوشش نمیده به اصطلاح این بیمه جنگی رو و خودشون نمیان رد بشن.
U.S. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, has claimed that Iranian negotiators who he says are engaging indirectly with Washington are reluctant to publicly acknowledge any negotiations because they fear reprisals at home, including being killed by their own people, as well as by the United States. Trump's comments came amid ongoing conflict between U.S.-led forces and Iran and contradictory statements from Tehran denying active peace talks.
And we're winning another one, I tell you. We're winning so big, nobody's ever seen anything like we're doing in the Middle East with Iran. And they are negotiating, by the way, and they want to make a deal so badly, but they're afraid to say it because they figure they'll be killed by their own people. They're also afraid they'll be killed by us. There's never been a head of a country that wanted that job less than being the head of Iran. I don't want it.
Preparatory talks with his Indian counterpart Subramaniam Jaishankar ahead of the Group of 7 G7 foreign ministers meeting being held near Paris. The meeting, hosted by France's G7 presidency at the Abbaye de Vendée-Cernay, brings together foreign ministers from the 7 major advanced economies: Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States, along with the European Union and invited partner countries such as India. Officials said the agenda will focus on ongoing geopolitical crisis, including the war in Ukraine and tensions in the Near and Middle East, maritime and energy security, and efforts to uphold global governance structures amid rising instability. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in China on 14 to 15 May after delaying the landmark trip amid the U.S.-Israel war with Iran. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed the dates of Trump's visit, telling reporters that President Xi had understood and accepted the request to postpone the trip.
Also, I'm pleased to announce that President Trump's meeting and long-awaited meeting with President Xi in China will now take place in Beijing on May 14th and 15th. First Lady Melania and President Trump will also host President Xi and Madam Peng for a reciprocal visit in Washington, D.C. at a later date to be announced.
This would be the first visit to China by a U.S. president in nearly 10 years. More from the international front when we come back after this short breather. India's parliament has passed a controversial bill that seeks to change how transgender people are legally recognized and their right to self-identify amid protests by opposition parties and the LGBTQ community. India is estimated to have around 2 million transgender people, though activists say the true number is higher and legal recognition remains uneven. The government says the changes will make welfare benefits more accessible and strengthen an existing law against exploitation and trafficking, but critics warn it could exclude many transgender, non-binary and gender-fluid people. The legislation was approved by both houses this week and now needs the president's assent to become law. In 2014, India's Supreme Court recognized transgender people as a third gender and affirmed their right to self-identify. Despite legal protections, many transgender people in India continue to face discrimination and limited access to education, healthcare and formal employment, often relying on traditional or informal forms of work. Parents and campaign groups seeking tighter restrictions on social media have welcomed a Los Angeles jury handing down an unprecedented win for a young woman who sued Meta and YouTube over her childhood addiction to social media. Jurors found that Meta, which owns Instagram, Facebook and WhatsApp, and Google, owner of YouTube, intentionally built addictive social media platforms that harmed the 20-year-old's mental health. The woman, who known as Kaylee, was awarded $6 million in damages, a result likely to have implications for hundreds of similar cases now winding their way through U.S. courts. Meta and Google said they disagreed with the verdict and intended to appeal. Tourists and local residents flocked to the tidal basin this week to view the cherry blossom trees approaching their peak bloom, continuing a century-old tradition that has become a hallmark of the U.S. capital's spring season. More than 3,000 cherry trees were gifted to the United States by Japan over 100 years ago, and they remain a central feature of the tidal basin's landscape, attracting thousands of visitors annually. City officials are monitoring crowds and implementing safety measures to manage heavy foot traffic during the peak bloom period. The annual cherry blossom display has become both a cultural celebration and a significant driver for tourism in Washington, D.C., drawing visitors from across the country and abroad. Those were the updates from International Front. Now we move to sports. Nepal's departmental teams Tribhuvan Army Club and Nepal Police Club secured their second consecutive victories in the Prime Minister Cup one-day national cricket tournament on Thursday. At Upper Mulpani ground, Nepal Police Club defeated Bagmati province by 7 wickets, powered by a century from Shankar Rana. Chasing a target of 266 runs, police completed the total in 44 hours, losing 3 wickets. Rana scored 116 runs off 128 balls to anchor the chase. Earlier, Bagmati, batting first after winning the toss, were bowled out for 265 runs with 4 balls remaining. In another match played today, Tribhuvan Army Club beat Gandaki province by 7 wickets. Chasing a target of 210 runs, Army reached the total in 34 hours with a loss of 3 wickets. The win marks Army's second consecutive victory in the tournament, having earlier defeated Nepal Police Club. European soccer's governing body UEFA said it has fined Benfica €40,000 for what it called racist and/or discriminatory behavior by supporters during their Champions League match against Real Madrid last month. Additional penalties imposed for actions by fans included a fine of €25,000 for objects thrown during the match and one of €8,000 for the use of a laser pointer. Assistant coach Pedro Machado was also suspended for 1 game for unsporting conduct. UEFA opened an investigation into the incident and provisionally suspended Cristiani for the return leg in Madrid the week after, where Real won 2-1 to seal a 3-1 aggregate victory. Women's football is gradually taking root in Somalia, reflecting improving security conditions in the conflict-hit nation, despite continued threats from the Al-Qaeda-linked militant group Al-Shabaab. A rare women's football match in the capital, Mogadishu, drew attention from spectators, with one male attendee remarking he had never witnessed such an event before in the conservative country, where even men's recreational activities have faced restrictions from militants. The emergence of a women's national team preparing for international competition, along with the organization of local matches, signals a cautious but notable shift in Somalia's social landscape. Officials say these developments point to growing stability after years of violence, although challenges remain amid the persistent presence of extremist groups opposed to such activities. And this brings us to the end of this news bulletin. But before we wrap up, a reminder of the headlines. Senior most member KC administers oath to newly elected HOR members. 240 out of 275 HOR members serving as first-time MPs. Balendra Shah endorsed as RSP's parliamentary party leader, likely to be appointed as the Prime Minister tomorrow. Bird flu outbreak hits thousands of poultry in Nepal's eastern Koshi province. Authorities enforce strict controls. Israel claims of killing Iran's Navy chief overseeing Strait of Hormuz blockade. Iran does not intend to negotiate, says its foreign minister. White House says Trump's meeting with Xi set for May. Visit to China to be the first by a US president since 2017. And Army and police secure second straight wins in PM Cup one-day cricket. Gandhi and Bagmati both defeated by 7 wickets. And that's it for this edition of Primetime News. Our next bulletin will be at 2200 hours Nepal time. Do join us through our social media and get the latest updates from our official website, nepaltelevision.com. Thank you for staying with us. Have a wonderful evening ahead.
Welcome to the studios of NTV World in Kathmandu. Public Service Broadcasting, PSB Nepal's new initiative to make Nepal more visible and audible to the global audience. Welcome on board.
This is NTV World, facts that speak, insights that matter.
Telling the stories of a changing planet. NTV World, Nepal's perspective to the world.
Exploring the heartbeat of Nepali creativity. This is NTV World.
The power of story shaped by technology. NTV World.
Unearthing Nepal's hidden heritage. Discovering the timeless Nepal.
Telling stories that endure across centuries. Where culture breathes, stories bloom.
When the world moves, we make a sense of it.
NTV World. Taste of Nepal. Every recipe, every flavor tells the story.
Journalism in the digital age. Fast, focused, verified.
Stories hold power. Stories reflecting life. Stories of the hinterlands. Reporting for NTV World.
This is NTV World. Welcome to News Hour.
This is NTV World. Welcome to Primetime News.
One story at a time.
Crossing borders, connecting voices, where Nepal meets the world in dialogue. This is NTV World, Nepal's perspective to the world.
Voices that connect Nepal to the world, bringing perspective, region and relevance to every story. NTV World, Nepal's perspective to the world.
Stand by. Mic is on.
3, 2, 1, cue.
We are NTV World.
A day most unexpected. September 8, 2025. A youth uprising. And the destruction of September 9. Those 2 terrifying days will forever remain etched in Nepal's political history. On the 9th of September, the army chief addresses the nation.
आन्दोलनरत समूहलाई आन्दोलनका कार्यक्रमहरू स्थगन गरी वार्ताको निमित्त आह्वान गर्दछौं।
Change and good governance, a movement led by the Generation Z. Country searched for one thing: a leader who was impartial, fearless, and widely accepted. In a nation that had already written history by appointing its first female Chief Justice, another historic milestone was achieved. Susila Karki became the country's first female executive head, the Prime Minister. Following the Gen Z movement, Karki was appointed with a clear mandate to address the extraordinary political crisis, build national consensus, and ensure a legitimate transfer of power through elections. Amid confusion and near collapse of state systems, restoring governance and rebuilding public trust became her greatest challenge. On September 12, 2025, at the age of 73, Karki took the oath of office and secrecy before President Ramchandra Podium.
प्रधानमन्त्री पदको जिम्मेवारी प्रचलित कानुनको पालना गरी
As Karki assumed office, her primary responsibility was clear: to resolve legal and constitutional crisis and guide the nation towards political stability.
रसस्वादन गर्न आएको होइन, मेरो उमेर पनि होइन त्यो। हामीले के चाहेको भने ठिक छ हाम्रोलाई खोजियो, आवाज गरियो त हामीले यो बेलामा किन सेवा नगर्ने भनेर सक्दो हामीले के गर्यौं भने 6 महिना मात्रै अवधि, त्योभन्दा बढी नबस्ने, कुनै हालतमा पनि हामीले कुरा यो आफ्ना काम कारबाही गरेर हामी चाहिँ मुक्त हुने र नयाँ आउने संसद, नयाँ आउने मन्त्रीहरूलाई जिम्मेवारी र दायित्व सुम्पिने हाम्रो चाहिँ एउटा हामीले अठोट गरेका छौं। मलाई जहाँसम्म लाग्छ यो अठोटमा यहाँहरूको साथ नपाइकन सम्भव चाहिँ छैन।
Burnt state infrastructures, demoralized security institutions, a divided youth movement with anger and competing voices. The dreams of martyrs. The expectations of their families. And the silent concerns of the citizens, too fearful to speak. 8 years after retiring as the Chief Justice, Susila Karki faced a mountain of visible and invisible challenges at one of the most critical moments in the nation's history.
अहिले हामी के देखिरहेछौं भन्ने मैले अस्ति नै बोल्दा पनि कहि भने हामी त अचानक जस्तो पो भएछौं। पोलिटिकल पार्टीले पनि गाली गर्छ, भरमारले गाली गर्छ, अहिले छोड भोलि छोड भन्छ, जेनजीले पनि आजै छोड भोलि छोड पछि छोड भन्छ। अब छोडौं भने के छोडौं, हामी त एकदम कस्तो भने पेन्डुलम जस्तो त्यही पनि सकस गरेर मेहनत गरेर बहुत हामीले एउटा धैर्य धारण गरेर हामी काम गर्दै छौं।
Yet even in such adversity, Karki stood tall and succeeded in restoring peace, laying the foundation for good governance and rebuilding hope among the people. Karki's leadership saw the formation of a cabinet reflecting the aspirations of the Gen Z generation. Continuous dialogue with youth groups, and efforts to address the sentiments of the injured and the families of the martyrs.
मैले भनेको कुरा त हामी एकदम गर्न तत्पर छौं, चाहन्छौं र गर्छौं पनि हामीलाई लागेको छ, तर हामीले निकै लड्नुपर्छ।
An independent judicial commission was formed to investigate the movement. The report submitted by the Gauri Bahadur Karki-led commission was received towards the end of her tenure with a commitment to implement. Karki initiated dialogue with political parties and their leaders to rebuild a conducive political environment in the country. Having witnessed a major Karki's decisions were grounded in the constitution and rule of law. Her clarity in public communication and firm stance against pressure earned her widespread public trust.
कसैको प्रति म आक्षेप पनि लाउँदिन। मेरो कृपया यति अनुरोध छ, सबै निर्वाचनमा आइदिनुस्। सबै कुरोको रिस पोख्दा पोख्दै मुलुकै गुमाउने काम चाहिँ हामी नगरौँ। हामी छलफलमा छौँ, अझै पनि हामीसँग समय छ। अहिले जो 2-2.5 महिना बाँकी छ भने त्यो त लाख टाइम हो हामीसँग। त्यसलाई घण्टामा गर्नुस्। हामी घण्टामा काम गरिरहेछौँ भने
को बहाली गर्ने, सुशासन दिने, सेवा प्रवाहलाई सुदृढ गर्ने र चाहिँ यो क्रममा हामीले हिंसा चाहिँ दोहोरिन नदिने, कुनै पनि हालतमा हिंसा दोहोरिन नदिने। हिंसा दोहोरियो अथवा कहीँ पनि रगतको थोपा मात्रै बग्यो भने पनि फेरि चाहिँ 23 र 24 गतेको जस्तो अवस्था आउन सक्छ। त्यसकारणले यसमा चाहिँ असाध्यै सावधान हुनुपर्छ। हिंसालाई जसरी पनि रोकथाम गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने मूल मन्त्र नै यही थियो। प्रधानमन्त्रीज्यूले एक थोपा रगत नबगिकन हामीले अहिले शासन सञ्चालन गर्नुपर्छ, चुनाव गराउनुपर्छ भनेर जे एउटा मान्यता मानक एउटा चाहिँ जे लक्ष्य दिनुभएको थियो त्यो लक्ष्य अनुसार गृह मन्त्रालयले काम गर्यो। हाम्रा सारा सुरक्षा
seemed impossible, conducting national elections became a reality. Karki's commitment to keeping the transitional government neutral created a fair political and electoral environment. With free and fair elections as her primary mandate, the elections were conducted on time, without dispute, and with credibility. On March 5, 2026, the House of Representatives elections were successfully completed, paving the way for the transfer of power to a democratically elected government. Born from a movement demanding the rule of law, Karki's leadership consistently prioritized strengthening that very principle. Although formed under extraordinary circumstances, limiting its scope in addressing all public expectations, Karki's government remained focused on key areas directly affecting people's lives like health, education, drinking water, employment, language, art, and culture. From major national pride projects like the Kathmandu-Tarai Madhes Fast Track and the Melamchi Drinking Water Project to broader development challenges, Karki's leadership ensured active progress. Drawing from her judicial background as the Chief Justice, Karki enforced strict adherence to law, upheld zero tolerance towards corruption, and maintained transparency in decision-making, setting a distinctive standard for good governance. With inclusive and widely accepted elections, Karki's government successfully laid the foundation for stable governance rooted in democratic practice. As Prime Minister, Susila Karki became a symbol of integrity and courage. From leading the Supreme Court to leading the nation at a very critical moment of history, Karki's legacy stands as a proud chapter in global politics, especially in the story of women's leadership.
President Abraham Lincoln said many years ago, if you think that education is expensive, how much ignorance do you want to finance? Right.
Many of these economists now, they have tech-based startups. And these tech-based startups, for them to even ideate and progress, you need ideas, you need people who have the experience as well as resources. I think that's exactly the space where you are an advantage. So I think Nepal should see this as an advantage and then think innovatively. You don't have to follow other country. You find what works for you, but goal is to make sure that is multiplied.
We are forgetting investing for the future. We are just handling the present illness, present poverty, present situation, somehow trying to manage it. But at the same time, that's where the vision comes in. The political or our people or the government they also have to invest in future. They have to keep an eye on the future.
Our strategy is not producing job seekers, but producing job creators. That's our
fantastic.
motto.
The university is producing job creators, not job seekers. Fantastic.
गुरु गोरखनाथका तपोभूमि गोर्खा उनकै अनुयायी कन्फट्टा जोगीको रूपमा चिनिने नाथहरूले नाद बजाउँदै कार्तिक र चैत महिनामा राति लगाउने फेरी परम्परा।
चैत र कार्तिकमा चाहिँ यो बजाइन्छ। यो बजाएपछि नाथ बजेपछि काल पनि भएको छ भने नाथ बजे काला भए काले गर्नेका दूर जाए भनेर हामीले फलाकिन्छ यसलाई। यो कृष्ण सागरको सिङ हो। अब यो चैत र कार्तिकमा बजाएपछि भूत पिचास मरी मसान सबै टाढा जाओस् भागोस् भनेर राति राति हामीले यो काम गरेर हिँडेको हो। काउना गुरुले ज्ञान दे काउना गुरुले कान फारे सतह गुरुले ज्ञान दे अलगा गुरुले कान फारे। अब हामीले यो बाबाजी पालादेखि नै यो गोरखनाथको चेला बनेर कान चिरेर अब हिँडेको।
पृथ्वीनारायण शाहको सन्धि विग्रह कूटनैतिक सम्बन्धमा कनपट्टा जोगीहरूको अत्यन्त ठुलो महत्त्वपूर्ण स्थान छ। कौटल्यको शब्दमा भन्ने हो भने राज्य जोडिएको छिमेकी शत्रु हुन्छ, त्यसभन्दा टाढाको छिमेकी चाहिँ मित्र हुन्छ। त्यसैले पृथ्वीनारायण शाहको लागि अथवा गोर्खाको लागि भनौँ 24 राज्यहरू शत्रु हुन् भने 22 राज्यहरू मित्र हुन्। विशेष गरेर सल्यानमा जहाँ सल्यानका राजकुमार रणबीर शाहलाई पृथ्वीनारायण शाहले आफ्नी एकमात्र पुत्री विलासपतिको पनि विक्रम सम्वत 1823 मा विवाह गराइदिए। ती भगवन्तनाथसँग पृथ्वीनारायण शाहले कूटनीतिक सम्बन्धको माध्यमबाट उनलाई अत्यन्त सम्मानित गरेर पृथ्वीनारायण शाहले लेखेका विषम 1830-31 का पत्रहरू छापिएका भन्छन्। त्यस्ता अरू पत्रहरू खोज्दै जाँदा होला पृथ्वीनारायण शाहले आफ्नो राज्य बढाउनेमा उनी धर्मप्राण पनि थिए। त्यसबाट प्रसाद गर्नेमा कूटनैतिक खेल्नेमा नाथयोगीहरूको अत्यन्त प्रयोग गरेको देखिन्छ र उनीहरूले पनि पृथ्वीनारायण शाहलाई मद्दत गरेका थिए भन्ने कुरा पृथ्वीनारायण शाहका नाति रणबहादुर शाहका पालाका पत्रहरूबाट पनि धेरै जात जातिलाई ती नाथयोगीहरूलाई जिम्मा दिएकोबाट बुझिन्छ र नेपालको एकीकरणमा यी नाथयोगीहरूको प्रभाव उनीहरूले दिएको योगदानको विषयमा छुट्टै एउटा राम्रो अध्ययन हुनुपर्छ भन्ने मलाई लाग्छ।
अब बिहानमा चाहिँ फेरि सब सिधाहरू बनाइदिनुहुन्छ। यो के अरे ग्रह शान्ति होस् भनेर हामीले त्यसको मन्त्र पढेर सबै हामीले यो हिँड्नुपर्छ। बाबाजीको पालादेखि नै यो अब गाउँमा यसो भनौँ न अब अंश बन्न जस्तै गरेर बाउले यो बाटो लाउँथे यो बाटो बाउले लाउँथे भनेर 3-4 भयो भने 4 बटेर हिँड्नुहुन्थ्यो। अब अहिले पनि त्यस्तै नै छ। यो पहिले बाबाजीले यतातिर हिँडेको भएको र म पनि अहिले यहाँतिर यो गोर्खातिर मैले हिँडिरहेको छु। मैले कायाना कोठारे मघा भारी बाजा सातो नगरेका पनि सोधरे मको नाराज
The political landscape of Nepal has just undergone a seismic shift. March 5 elections have delivered a historic mandate for the country. Rashtriya Swatantra Party secured a staggering supermajority, completely redefining the balance of power and sweeping aside traditional vanguards. Meanwhile, grassroots movements like newly formed Shram Sanskriti Party are also making their national debut. To help us evaluate what it means for the future of our republic, we are joined today by Pranav Kharel, who is a prominent sociologist and a sharp political analyst. He is known for his deep reading of Nepal's democratic transitions. Welcome to NTV World Inside. It's very good to have you here.
Thank you, Saraji.
We've been through a vacuum of a period, and it was, if you agree, a testing period for the country as well. But the Sushila Karki-led government has delivered what they promised, an election which was largely free and fair, I believe. How big of a success would you say it was?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for having me. I agree with you. In the aftermath of the September protest last year, where what we saw, we collectively as a nation had thought that we are going off guard. But Sushila Karki-led government, for a better reason, has made sure that we are back on track by holding elections on time. And the mandate that that has come is, if you compare it historically, this is the second time any party has won a close to two-thirds majority, and which is a super majority. So people have spoken out. So it's now for the parties deliver, especially the Rashtriya Swatantra Party.
The result that RSP was able to garner, it's almost 2/3, it's a super majority. I think the last time we saw this kind of majority was in 1959 elections. Do you think the party itself had calculated this massive success, or do you think it's just a byproduct of the frustration among the public?
I think partly they had calculated and partly they were also taken by surprise. Partly they had calculated in the sense that if you reflect back on the election strategies of RSP, they were carefully articulating their their politics. For example, the way they decided to field Balendra Shah in Tarai, that sent a strong message. Similarly, they were also able to cash on the grievance, but the grievance exists everywhere. Anti-incumbency is always there in any society. How do you articulate that grievance and how do you convert that grievance into a political victory is a strategy that you have to pay attention to, which RSP has been able to do very well. But they were also, I think, taken a bit by surprise, I think, because they were definitely looking for a majority, but I'm not quite sure about the super majority.
Many old guards have gone down in this election. Do you think this is a permanent dismantling of the old system?
The parties, Nepali Congress, UML, and for the last 20 years, the Maoists, have been in the driving seat for a long period of time. And one of the challenging issues of Nepali politics has been the politicization of the public life. In fact, by this I mean the partification of the public life. So every aspect of the public life was partified. You know, if you are not a member of a political party, you could not get an opportunity to participate meaningfully in civil life. I mean, that was very frustrating, and that was also demeaning on the part for the citizens, because it reeked like a modern day feudalism. So, and in many ways, our traditional parties have been have modeled themselves around the feudal structures. But there was a huge disconnect between what we call the Gen Zs and a little older people than Gen Zs, because economically, culturally, and even to an extent politically, there was a lot of autonomy on the part of the citizen from the state-led processes. You know, state was doing its work, but then the citizens had already sort of crafted their own space or autonomous space in all these spheres that I just mentioned. So there was a disconnect, and the disconnect, to add to that disconnect, was the fact that the mode of communication, if you will, had changed. You know, traditionally the mode of communication was through, you know, you would organize rallies and you would do that. Now in this tech savvy era, you were communicating through new medias. So the mode of communication had changed, the mode of messaging had changed, the message itself had changed, which many leaders in the traditional parties failed to realize. As a result, there was a huge disconnect, and then we see this. Second, to borrow a phrase as a Nepali political scientist had put in, this contest was also a contest between half the population, half each, because if you divide the 3 crore population into 1 crore 50 lakhs, 1 crore 50 lakhs, so half of them were partified. At a theoretical level, if not at an empirical level, we could say that, and the other half was not. So this division was quite open, and this mandate, which you call the dismantling, which I don't believe is the dismantling, is a result of this. So as for the dismantling, the traditional party structures will now not work, because these parties have emerged in a very different global political context. These older traditional parties were a result of a Cold War era politics, where ideology of a particular variety sort of guided them. But today, such kind of working doesn't help because times have changed. We have new economic, political, and cultural situation at play, which these parties have not been able to, as I pointed out earlier, not been able to address. Therefore, we see this situation.
Mm-hmm. How long do you think can a government survive purely on service delivery and technocracy without taking clear ideological stances, for instance, for federalism or secularism and constitutional reform?
The population has grown weary of the ideological rhetoric because there is limited delivery. I'm not saying the previous governments did not deliver. They did. But that delivery was limited. That delivery was conditional. And that delivery was, by conditional I mean the parties were then using that delivery as a succor to secure vote every time they went. For instance, they would say, okay, it is our party which has built this road, highway or road or connectivity or hospital. Therefore, you should vote our candidate every time. So that kind of as I indicated earlier, that kind of a feudal mentality would no longer help. Therefore, in the short run, RSP will find success if they deliver on the front of governance, as their manifesto sort of indicates that they want to go for example, paperless governance model, or that is less of a bureaucratic model. So if they deliver on those fronts and some of the other fronts that they have promised, in the short run, that will help them. But in the longer run, if you claim yourself to be a political party, there has to be a holding force. So as I indicated earlier, Nepali Congress, UML, Maoist, all are product of a time where they were politically socialized in an environment which was reflective of the developments of the 60s and the 70s. That is the industrial capitalism that was taking place in the West. So that industrial capitalism brought to fore the debate between socialism and capitalism. Within socialism, what kind of socialism would you take, and what the other form of socialism would be communism. So that kind of an ideological debate was there, and the parties sort of structured themselves along those lines, and the leaders were also politically socialized in that light. So if you take that very capitalism, which is still at play, its logics have changed today. Some 40, 45 years, 50 years down the line, they have changed. Today, it is not the traditional industrial capitalism that is at play. Today we have big tech giants, like Meta or Twitter or other meta tech giants, which today control the economy and to an extent politics. So, and we also have a significant section of the population today that we call Gen Z, which is also a tech netizen, which grew up, which was born with technology, in a very technologically invasive environment. So, how has the society, politics, culture shaped by that process is reflected in our politics. Therefore, I said our old guards are not able to sort of take cognizance of that shift. Some leaders may have taken note of it and tried to adopt, but at a general level, the old guards failed to adopt. Therefore, in the changed political environment, cultural and economic environment, the traditional party system will not work. Having said this, I do not mean to say there is no ideology at play. Technology itself produces its own ideology. For example, there is now a different kind of echo chamber that is generated in social media, which was also reflected in the way people voted this time around. So if you are building your political opinion based on what you see on TikTok or Insta, so that is definitely an ideological framing, because then you are framing the world view in a particular perspective. Therefore, I think ideology has not died out, but the old forms of ideology have changed and they have taken a new shape.
This election also showed the emergence of a really relatively new party led by Harka Sampang, which has the philosophy of labor first. How do you interpret the mood among the voters at the grassroots?
I, for one, cannot comment absolutely on Harkaji's rise because I have looked at it from a very distance. But two things are very clear. One, Harka Sampang could and his party could do very well in the traditional Janjati constituency. His articulation of labor first is also his idea of a very ethnocentric approach, very nationalist approach to indigeneity, being that mato or soil, I'm indigenous to soil and you should value labor to the soil. It's a very indigenizing idea that he's floating. If we go by his past statements in public, he's also called for military conscription and all that kind of a thing. So some electorate sort of have resonated with what Harkaji has to say, and they have given his mandate. We will also have to understand Harkaji's rise in the context where the Eastern Hills have, for the last 25 years or so, seen a massive growth of ethnic parties, be that Mongol National Organization or even a recent developments out there. So for the last 35-40 years. So I am reading Harkaji's rise in that context. We are yet to see, is it a continuation of that kind of an identity politics articulation in a different manner, or is it altogether a different ballgame?
Considering that several prominent parties also did not garner as many or reach threshold, in fact, to be acknowledged as a national party, do you think this is solely just a constituency thing?
No, we'll have to again put things in perspective. This election is taking place in the aftermath of the Gen Z protest. So I go back to that example that I use. The national population has always been demarcating the whole politics between people who are part of the party system, traditional party system, and who are outside of it. So, and they have well articulated understanding that people who are part of the party system have benefited disproportionately. So they should be done away with. You know, in that context, we see that the traditional parties have been swept away for the time being, and we see the rise of new parties, including that of Harkaji's. Harkaji also emerged as an independent candidate in mayoral election. So we'll have to understand that our national articulation or national imagination is based on certain deliveries at certain local levels. People who have delivered at local levels to whatever that delivery may mean to that respective population or the electorate, they have delivered. For example, Balen is considered to have delivered in Kathmandu. Harkaji delivered in Dharan. He brought in the drinking water. He fixed the drinking water problem. Balen is credited with fixing the garbage management issue or other issues. So all these issues, you know, because we are a democracy with low expectation. We are not a democracy with high expectation. So even small gestures and small acts sort of garner a lot of trust among the population. So we will have to see their rise also in that context. So their elevation, so it was articulated in such a way that if they can deliver at the local level at this point, so what if they get a chance at the national level? So I think that sort of message resonated well with the population.
Over the course of time, of course, you have in fact observed a lot of transitions in our country. What would you say, what kind of democracy would you say would be best fit for Nepal?
For the last 75 years, Nepal has wrestled with one or other forms of democracy. Even Panchayat called itself a democracy. And the modernization process that it undertook also sort of brought in changes that later on proved very vital for Nepali society. But at least for the last 40 years, we've practiced kind of a democracy which is largely a Westministerial model. And we said that the national representatives would legislate and bring in laws and usher in development. That model seems to have had partial success, where a large part of the electorate feels that a lot of their issues are to be settled at the lower level, or at the, let's say, at the local level. And at the national level, the kind of debates that often take place do not resonate. So this is at a very rhetorical level. But at an empirical level, if you look at the working of the democracy, by and large, I would not say we were off track. By and large, the framework was okay, but it had its own share of problem. And not correcting that share of problem resulted in this. So we'll have to understand. For example, to answer your question, I will use an example. Nepal, I believe, currently has three forms of victims, if you will. The first victim is a victim of the conflict, armed conflict. Second is the victim of the financial frauds. Many financial frauds, including meter. We have meter buyers or loan sharks. And then third, we have the victims of what we call the natural disasters. States' response to all three set is problematic, and their wounds they have been grieving for a long time. So they have open wounds, if you will. So not being able to address these victims sort of means you are sitting on a cake powder, and it could explode. It did explode. We'll have to understand that before the Gen Z protest, there were several other rounds of protest, including against the loan sharks. And time and again there has been rallying by the victims of the natural disaster. And of course, armed conflict victims are always there. So we will also have to put, so if the democracy is not able to address the victims, and if our democracy only creates victims, so that's going to be a problem. Second, one of the biggest challenges of our democracy has been, it's a neoliberal variety of democracy, where the economic opportunities have not been created enough. So that has created another set of problem. You have a very young population, which is very restless, globally connected, hyper-connected rather, but does not have enough, So in terms of economic opportunities. Therefore, we have to think about a democracy which balances opportunities with social justice. So if we cannot strike a balance between the two, I mean, any form of democracy will not work. I don't think so. We will have the kind of stability we are looking for.
Your research has highlighted a youth demand for meritocracy. What structural changes do you think is needed in the state apparatus to finally replace the culture of nepotism and avoid brain drain?
Every society has nepotism. You can take nepotism. There are different ways in which nepotism sort of manifests. In our part of the world, let's say in South Asia, nepotism manifests a little more prominently, as anthropologist Dorvadru Bista often used to call what he called the Afno-Manche culture. So, but then in the West also we have some form of nepotism. We have the culture of recommendation. So, who recommends you and who recommends whom sort of lands you jobs and opportunities. So, having said that, nepotism sort of bars people, deserving candidates, from coming in. But and meritocracy is one of the expected aspects of democracy. But we will also have to pay very close attention to the other aspect. We are talking about meritocracy in a society which is historically unequal. So we have to balance the idea of meritocracy with the question of inclusion. So meritocracy for whom? For example, if you are coming from a community that has been traditionally advantaged, you are already a beneficiary of the structural benefits of structural dividends that existed. So, as against someone who may be a first in his family or a community to receive university education and then get a job. So, if there is this competition between these two kind of individuals, so meritocracy alone cannot be the defining feature. So, of course, meritocracy is very important. People with adequate expertise should get opportunity, but then we will also have to consider our historical context where social exclusion was pervasive. So, we will also have to balance our meritocracy with inclusion. Only then we can sort of, but this again creates its own set of tension. So, just to go back to your earlier question, what kind of democracy we would want, and this democracy would, so our democracy would be a little messy. I see a lot of mess in the coming days because these questions will be asked again. You know, for now people are brushing aside these questions. I don't think so these questions will be brushed aside. I see these questions coming out very prominently.
Considering the current number at the parliament, how strong of a role do you think the opposition parties are going to play at the parliament? And do you think there's a risk of tyranny of majority?
See, democracy produces its own contradictions, as does the politics. But tyranny of majority, I do not want to comment on it as yet, because we have not seen how RSP on its own would function. I mean, we have seen RSP function as part of a government. It was part of a coalition. So coalition has its own compulsions. So I would give that benefit of doubt to RSP. But on the role of the opposition, I see we'll have to consider this. In our political culture, we do not generally we have a working relationship among politicians. Up until now, we've seen that, and I hope this will continue. If it doesn't, then situation will change, because parliament is of course about numbers, and number is against the opposition. So, for example, the intent of RSP will be clear when it comes to dividing the parliamentary committees. For example, Public Accounts Committee is generally headed by a leader of the opposition party. The idea is that that's the committee where a lot of national accounting questions are asked. So, and national accounting money is controlled by the treasury, is controlled by the government. Therefore, the opposition should be on the Public Accounts Committee. If they do not give that position to the opposition, let's say Nepali Congress, then we can question their intent. If they do, then we can say that, okay, they seem to be abiding by the general democratic parliamentary principles that are set. So, as I said, we'll have to wait and watch before jumping our guns.
Considering all the developments around the world, this period seems like intense when we look at the geopolitical landscape. How do you see the next government balancing diplomacy, especially with our neighboring giants?
See, that's a very interesting question. I, for one, do not believe in balancing act. And the balancing act is very difficult. Why I am saying this is, we'll have to put it into perspective. The balancing act that many of our people talk about of the Nepali states in the past is largely again a Cold War era politics that we will have to consider. Both our neighbors were not very economically vibrant. In comparison to us, of course, they were very vibrant, but at a global scale, they were not very vibrant. So what the regime of the day did was they used the West. They used the West and Soviet Union to leverage against India and China. But today things are very different. Today our two neighbors are the global economic engines. China is the global factory. India similarly is a very major economy. So if we want to engage, rather than balance, I would use the term engage. If we want to engage with them, we will have to offer a meaningful economic blueprint to neighbors and to the extended neighbor, the United States. So we cannot leave out the United States when we consider the two, because for the last 80 years, it is the relationship between the three that has sort of governed South Asia and has affected Nepal too. So we cannot sort of rule out. So we will have to offer a meaningful economic blueprint, which of course the RSP manifesto sort of, if you go by the manifesto, they indicate that. Second, when we talk about how do we engage with our neighbors and on the broader foreign policy front, we will also have to pay attention to the diaspora. Today, comparison to the 60s and the 70s, we have a significant diaspora both in the Gulf and in the West, and increasingly spread across other parts of the world. So they too will have a significant role to play. So when we want to, let's say you want to engage with China, and here RSP is promising that once a Nepali, always a Nepali. That is what their manifesto says. They want to bring in the overseas Nepalese, NRN Nepalese, and contribute and make sure that their skills are used, and in return they are also treated at national par. So we have a global powerhouse called China, which is a global manufacturer. So how would you use the skills that the NRNs have in order to bridge the gap? We need a lot of technology transfer. Our need is technology transfer. So our foreign policy should be geared in that direction. The old rhetorics, I don't think so is going to use. I mean, of course, there are certain traditional concerns. China has its own traditional concerns. India has its own traditional concerns. But we will also have to consider the fact that both India and China have also changed in these many years. And for instance, China's part that is attached to us or close to us has a significantly lower population but a vast territory. Similarly, on the southern side, the India's population, the area that is attached to us has a significant population, but in terms of territory, they are not a very sizable territory. So what does this mean? So what does being close to Uttar Pradesh and Bihar mean in terms of economy, in terms of connectivity? So, and it's not that in the last 35 years nothing have happened. Infrastructure connectivity has been worked out, and we have now rails coming up to the Indian borders. And on the Chinese front, I think we need more air connectivity rather than the land connectivity. We need more air connectivity, and there is a lot of talk of business being done. We do a lot of our trade through India, and we are also trying to increase our trade through China. So it's the economy that we'll have to play out well, because if we don't do that, then mere rhetorics, I don't think so, are going to help us.
Ideally, the common goal for countries is to grow together.
Right.
Nepal government has partnered with many countries in economic front or infrastructure front as well. In the past, we have signed many programs that have been controversial. There are also programs that are in the cards, in the table, in discussions that have concerned the general public. What do you think of it?
I think you are hinting at MCC and other agreements. In principle, I think the way we engage, let's say MCC, our foreign policy, if you want to view that from a foreign policy perspective, Nepali state's foreign policy has always been regime-centric. During the Panchayat, Americans were the biggest backers of the Panchayat. So the American modernization sort of played out in Nepal very well, and also benefited the elite, and sort of that the effects of that modernization process trickled down to the society. Similarly, when it comes to MCC, I think at the first look, MCC should not be a problem, because it's It's a project that talks about connectivity. But I am personally concerned about the money. The money Nepali state itself can generate. If it is about generating electricity, I think we are in a position to generate the amount that MCC has promised. But the fact is that the Americans have had a traditional hold over the Nepali political structure for a long period of time, as a result of which they were able to sort of get hold onto the energy sector. I for one have always stood against the MCC personally, at a personal level, because I believe it's for the South Asians to decide their energy policy. It's not for the Americans or the others. We of course can seek help in terms of technology transfer, which I have been emphasizing quite a lot, because then the energy policy and the energy, because if you are able to control the energy, for example, then you are able to control many things. But having said that, this is my personal opinion. I don't think so. This is how the people in Singhadarbar were thinking and are going to think, because they think that engaging with America at a more deeper level is more beneficial to the country, which makes sense to the extent that a large section of our diaspora lives in the United States and the West. But therefore there is a paradox, the society pushes you to engage more with the West, because a large section of the society is there. But then traditionally state, if you think from the perspective of the state wants to have its autonomy. So more engagement with more powerful countries means your autonomy to work, given your institutional capacity, will be limited. So I think there is a paradox there. And on the Chinese front, I think it's the same story. I mean, Chinese have come here with their own development model. They want to expand, which is understandable. But again, we should take things with a pinch of salt and with a lot of caution, because we'll have to see how much institutional capacity we have to sort of engage in the BRI framework that China has put forward, because there are other components to BRI, and connectivity is just one. So how comprehensive are we going to be in our interaction? It's for the people in Singhadarbar to decide.
So the fear of losing autonomy maybe is, for now, wait and watch.
There are two things. If you want to interact in an economy, in a world system that is highly interconnected, then definitely you are going to lose your autonomy, as economist Danny Roderick puts it, that if you are looking for more of a connectivity, then the states should not think more about their autonomy, because autonomy will be compromised. But if you want autonomy, I mean, as I said, I'm just putting in the picture for you. If you want autonomy, then you engage less. But if you want connectivity, you want more interaction, then you compromise on your autonomy. So it is all for you to choose. So,
do you think we are capable enough to maintain that autonomy ourselves?
As of now, the records of the last 2 decades are not very optimistic. We tend to swing a lot. Our center has sort of shaken. Our center was never very strong, but it is shaken. That's because we have not put a lot of emphasis on our economic growth. Today's interaction primarily rests on economic interaction. And it's the economy, it's not the ideology. So ideology has taken a new shape, as I've been trying to point out time and again. It has taken a new shape. So if we understand these complexities and nuances and work, I think we can make things do, because many other states like Nepal have performed better. They have made choices, and some choices have worked out for them, some choices have not, but largely they have steered their ship. So I mean, drawing lessons, we can of course, I think, manage. I don't think so things are that very pessimistic.
Are our current federal structures strong enough to sustain a republic, or does the RSP's centralized popularity suggest we need to rethink how power is decentralized entirely?
What is the nature of power of Nepali state and its concurrent relationship with Nepali society? If we ask this question, then we can answer the question, why did Nepal opt for a federal system? Nepal opted for a federal system because it wanted to do away with a long-held tradition of a centralized, Nepali state was a centralized agrarian feudal state. So we wanted to change that, and we wanted to change the nature of the power, but it doesn't happen overnight. So we'll have to see how the power blocks shift. So from 1950, the year when 1950-51, when Nepal, when it was promised that Nepal would have a constituent assembly which would decide its fate, we reached, it took another 5 decades for us to come to that position. We also came to a conclusion for a federal state. The demand for federal state is very old. Right back, way back in the 1950s, there was a demand, especially in Tarai. And we now see that the Tarai movement or the Madhya movement of 2007 was also very significant in heralding the federalism, along with the decade-long Maoist-led civil war. So all of this, so we will have to consider the fact that why did we sort of arrive at this point? So if RSP, with RSP, I think there's a lot of confusion, because publicly some of their senior members have said we do not need federal structure, it is too costly, and all that political paraphernalia that comes with the criticism of, or rather cynicism of federalism, has been publicly stated. But then we also know that it's a historical fact that Nepal came to a federal state because we wanted to not just devolve power, but we also wanted to share power, because it's sharing and share rule and self-rule. So that is why federalism exists. To answer the other part of your question, can our structures sustain? I'm not sure, because we've not done a audit of the way we practiced federalism. For example, there is a council called, it's a constitutionally sort of position, National Coordination Council, which is headed by Prime Minister, and this council is supposed to, it's a 20-member council which has federal ministers and all chief ministers of 7 states. So they are supposed to meet regularly and discuss issues in federal governance. This has not happened. And there are, for example, the central government was supposed to legislate laws in order to ensure in order to facilitate the implementation of federalism. For example, provincial police. Unless you change the national police law, provincial police cannot sort of operate accordingly. So all these things are there. So we have to first, I think, do a audit of the practice of federalism, and then sort of come to a conclusion whether our current practice of federalism is on the right track. I, for one, believe it is on the right track. Theoretically, because if you want to do away with this practice, then the forces that this doing away will unleash will be very difficult for both society and state to handle.
Lastly, what takeaways or learnings do you think the next government, our new government, can take from previous governments, and what would you say would be blind spots that it will need to avoid?
Okay. Since the new political actors in town have been saying that the last 35 years nothing has occurred in the last 35 years, I would sincerely request them to look back on those 35 years, be that the political and the parliamentary practices, be that the economic practices, be that the cultural policies that the Nepali state has stood for, and the positives and the negatives out of those practices. Now, as for the blind spot, I think there's a lot of apprehension on two fronts. One, as I indicated, RSP's real commitment to federalism, inclusion, and the constitutional principles as such. The other blind spot is, this drive for technocratic governance, what will happen to the question of inclusive development and the other questions that comes with, because this political set is going to emphasize on meritocracy, and as I've already indicated, meritocracy is very important, but in a society that has been historically sidelined, and where inequality reigns large. So how do you sort of manage that competing tension? I think that would be another blind spot that this new incoming government will have to pay attention to.
Mr. Kral, thank you so much for your time and opinion here on Insight.
Thank you, Saraji, for having me.
Well, as the first session of the new federal parliament is convening in a few days or weeks' time, the nation enters a period defined by a mandate unseen in decades. The transition from campaign promises to legislative action begins now, marking a critical test for governance, accountability, and structural reforms that have long been at the center of national discourse. How these representatives navigate the complexities of this new assembly will define the trajectory of the country's stability and economic resilience. We will keep tracking these developments here on NTV World. Thank you for being part of this conversation on Insight. Until next time.
President Abraham Lincoln said many years ago, if you think that education is expensive, how much ignorance do you want to finance? Right.
Many of these economists now, they have a tech-based startups. And these tech-based startups, for them to even ideate and progress, you need ideas, you need people who have the experience as well as resources. I think that's exactly the space where you are an advantage. So I think Nepal should see this as an advantage and then think innovatively. You don't have to follow other country. You find what works for you, but goal is to make sure that is multiplying.
We are forgetting investing for the future. We are just handling the present illness, present poverty, present situation, somehow trying to manage it. But at the same time, that's where the vision comes in. The political or our people or the government, they also have to invest in future. They have to keep an eye on the future.
Our strategy is not producing job seekers, but producing job creators. That's our
fantastic.
motto.
The university is producing job creators, not job seekers. Fantastic. Only after 6 decades of the institutional development of the now popular game of cricket did Nepal get the opportunity to play in the World Cup. Although cricket was introduced in Nepal during the Rana regime, the sport was confined to a limited number of people, namely the elite. It all started with equipment brought by students returning from their studies in Britain and India. Although Cricket Association of Nepal (CAN) was established in 1947, cricket remained centered among a few affluent individuals and in limited tournaments for a long time. Starting with the Bishnu Trophy in 1948, tournaments were limited to competitions like the Madan Memorial Sealed, Jugal Kishore Trophy, Rammani Trophy, and later the Jai Trophy. Even as the sport expanded outside Kathmandu Valley, it took decades for cricket to develop at the grassroots level. After the International Cricket Council (ICC) granted Nepal affiliate membership in 1988, Nepali cricket embarked on its international journey. The rule of mandatory participation in tournaments by the ICC and the Asian Cricket Council (ACC) opened doors to international competition for Nepal. After participating in the Under-19 Asian tournament in Hong Kong in 1996, Nepal has not looked back. Winning titles at the Asian and global levels, Nepali cricket team continues its journey towards the pinnacle of world cricket.
Goes down the ground because he was given that line outside off stump. So the first boundary of the contest, a handsome one.
Initially confined to Turikkhel in Kathmandu, many international tournaments were hosted in Nepal after an international standard ground was built in Kirtipur. Nepal has also shown its proactiveness in differently abled cricket tournaments like the T20 World Cup for the blind in 2012 and the Asian Cricket Tournament for the deaf. Nepali women's national cricket team has also achieved remarkable success in a short period of time. The latest addition in Nepali cricket is the floodlit Tribhuvan University Cricket Stadium and the Nepal Premier League that has provided opportunity for Nepali players to rub shoulders with world-class players.
स्वागत छ लुक्लामा तपाईहरुलाई राम्रोसँग आउनुभयो के प्लेनमा डरहरु लाग्नु भएन प्लेन भित्तैमा ठोकेला जस्तो हुन्छ यहाँ त
At an altitude of 2860 meters, Lukla is the starting point of arguably one of the best trekking routes in the world, up to the Mount Everest base camp, finishing above 5,400 meters. Ram is one of hundreds of seasonal porters in the route.
अब यो त मान्छेलाई पनि यस्तै हो सजिलो त सर यो किनभने हिलो हुँदैन देश क्याम्प जाँदा अब क्याम्पको 1000 रुपैयाँ हुन्छ डबल बारी बोकेर अब 2-3 क्याम्प जति हिँडिन्छ त्यतिखेर चाहिँ 5000 जति बच्छ.
The route is popular, in fact crowded. This is only for the 2 months of April and May, and so is the profession of Ram a seasonal affair.
अब कुनै खेर पाइन्छ कुनै खेर पाइँदैन मान्छे यतिकै हुन्छ त अब कुनै खेर त अब 4-5 दिन यतिकै बसेकै बजारतिर आयो घुम्यो यतिकै फेरि कोठामा फर्केर आयो अब बाँकी खाना खाँदै बस्यो त्यस्तै हो सर विदेश जाउँ त अब लाग्छ जानुलाई पनि फेरि अलिक गाह्रै छ पैसा चाहिन्छ अब पैसा छैन त्यो पेसामा पढाइ चाहिँ पुरुषहरू नै हुन्छ महिलाहरू पनि आदि हुने हुन्छ बिहानदेखि कहिले अब घाम लागिरहन्छ एकछिनमा यस्तो बादल आइहाल्छ डुममा भइहाल्छ यहाँको मौसम यस्तै हो सर पढेको भए त बाँकी अब सानोतिनो जबहरू हुन्थ्यो कि
Trekkers pass through nearly 6-7 small hamlets along the Lukla-Namche section of the route.
यहाँ सबै घरमा बिजुली पानीको राम्रो व्यवस्था छ सर
The locals do not have infrastructures or might have resected roads, but they have embraced development.
नाम्चे लुक्ला सबै बाटोभरि नै फोहोर राख्ने बाटो राखिदिनु भएको छ
The topography is inhospitable, but the people are friendly.
यहाँ हरेक गाउँको आफ्नै हाइड्रो बिजुली निकाल्ने पावर छ
Solar panels give much needed warm water to survive the cold. No wonder everything comes at a cost here, charging a cell phone or getting a Wi-Fi connection.
साह्रै दुःख पाइयो मम्मी सानैमा बित्यो अनि पढ्नै पाएन यस्तो दुःख गर्नु परेछ अनि छोराछोरीलाई चाहिँ यस्तो दुःख गरेर भए पनि पढाउँछु अङ्ग्रेजी बोल्ने भए त अब कति अब खैराहरू भेट्छन् हिजो पनि 4 जना भेटेको थियो फाल्टो ग्रुप अब अङ्ग्रेजी बोल्नु जानिदैन त्यही भएर पठाइदियो ल अब यहाँ चाहिँ खाना खाने ठाउँ हो यहाँ खाना खानु पर्यो
हजुर सबभन्दा धेरै थुक्प नै हो किनभने अरू खाएको पनि जान्छ नि त जानु त बनाएर जान्छ तर त्यो सकिहालेन भने फेरि त्यो बिग्रिन्छ के अमिलो
Food is no more cooked in firewood like in the past, despite LP gas cylinders arriving either on humans' back or the beast of burdens. Our first day trek concludes at Phagding, a small hamlet at an altitude of 2610 meters. Almost all trekkers lodge here on the first day to acclimatize themselves for higher elevations. The place has amenities for travelers at par with an urban town, except roads and infrastructures.
यहाँ यो फलामको चिम्नी नभएको त गरै हुँदैन सर यहाँ त फलामको चिम्नी भएन भने त जाडोले मर्यो
As the dawn breaks, Ram emerges from his overnight elopement for lodging.
अब जाने होला सर उकालो यो अलिक सपना बिग्रियो अनि त्यति राम्रो सुकेन सपनामा त खै कस्तो अचम्मक सपना देख्यो सपनामा चाहिँ बुढी चाहिँ अर्कैसँग गएको देखेको खै केही कुरामा चाहिँ डिस्केस भएको जस्तो भयो अनि त्यहाँबाट चाहिँ कपडा सपडा प्याक गरेर हिँडेको सपना देख्यो के गर्न सकिएन खै कहिले के गर्ने हो मान्छे बुढी राम्रो छ सपना चाहिँ त्यस्तो देखेँ कस्तो अचम्म लाग्यो बुढी फेरि मभन्दा ठुलो छ कि मभन्दा त राम्रै पनि छ ठुलो पनि छ त्यस्तो सपना देख्दा चाहिँ कुनै खेर चाहिँ अब डर पनि लाग्छ क्या बा पछि अब छोडेर हिँडिदिने हो कि आफूसँग केही नभएपछि त होइन बा अब हिँडिदिने हो कि जस्तो पनि लाग्छ यो सागो हो यो सागो चाहिँ काठको बनाएको यो बर्खामा ठुलो पानी आउँछ ठुलो खोला हुँदाखेरि त बगाएर लगिहाल्छ फेरि बनाउँछ यो चाहिँ पारी घाँस दाउराको लागि बनाउँछ
The Kumbh region has more than a dozen suspension and concrete bridges to safely cross the Dudh Kosi, meaning Milk White Kosi and its tributaries. As we continue our steep climb towards Namche Bazaar, we pass through freshly felled pine trees.
यो चाहिँ घरको लागि काठ काटेको हो यो घरको काठ काट्दाखेरि चाहिँ यो निस्केको दाउरा हो सर। यो दाउरा अब सधैँभरि खुल्दैन, कुनै बेला खुल्दाखेरि चाहिँ काट्ने हो।
Only permitted numbers are cut every year, while the locals do not forget to grow pine saplings in their backyard to replace the cut ones. This is the entry point of Sagarmatha National Park, a buffer zone guarded by Nepal Army. The small hamlet of around 200 houses is no less than a modern town as we venture around the next morning with Ram. We not only discover Ram's free-of-cost night laws, but also a secret tavern where porters gather to gamble.
टुरिस्ट आएन भने त अब यहाँ त अब गाह्रो छ नि सर। अब आलु मात्रै फलाएर अब के खानु यहाँ, त्यो पनि अब आलु धेर फल्दैन, कम फल्छ। टुरिस्ट आएन भने त धेरै गाह्रो छ सर। अब छनु त छ कि अझ योभन्दा राम्रो, योभन्दा नि अब राम्रो अब घरहरू बनाओस्, राम्रो सरसफाइ होस्, अब राम्रो सुविधा होस् न, त्यहाँदेखि चाहिँ आउँछ। यहाँ त अब त्यस्तो मोटरहरू आयो भने त फेरि हामीलाई गाह्रो भइहाल्छ नि सर। अब हामी फेरि अब हामी भोटरहरू फेरि त्यतिकै हुन्छ, बेरोजगार हुन्छ। अब हाम्रो त अब खै जिन्दगी त अब यस्तोले त अब गाह्रै हो, तर अब के गर्नु त सर। अब खासै अब केही अब गर्ने बाटै छैन हाम्रो, अब यही नै हो हाम्रो त।
A phone call from Lukla upsets us more than Ram, as he misses a much better opportunity to accompany trekkers to the base camp. The weather remains unfavorable as we fail to catch a glimpse of the Mount Everest. With a bit of dejection for not being able to see the roof of the world, we start our journey back to Lukla. On the way, Ram gives us a good news. He got another lucrative trip.
अब चाहिँ अलिक चाँडो जानु पर्ला हो सर। अब आजै म फेरि फर्केर नाम्ची पुग्नु पर्ने छ।
Back at Lukla, Ram prepares himself for the 14-day trip to the base camp with high hopes for making decent earning. It's time to part now, as Ram bids us goodbye in a haste in Lukla to make his dream come true. A roof for his wife and education for his little princess. A day most unexpected. September 8, 2025.
Good evening and welcome to Business World. I am your host, Siksha Patrai. It's been a busy and volatile week in global business, from rising geopolitical tensions and sharp swings in oil and natural gas prices to major trade deals, tighter tech regulations and shifting job markets. The global economy is showing both pressure and transformation. Energy markets in particular have seen dramatic movement, with prices first surging on the supply fears and then falling sharply after US President Donald Trump said negotiations to end the war were progressing. Here's a look at the top stories shaping the business world this week. From rising geopolitical tensions to energy market shocks, global oil prices have seen sharp swings in recent days. Prices initially surged after disruptions linked to Iran affected flows through the Strait of Hormuz, a critical route for global energy supplies. But markets have since pulled back as signals of possible negotiations and limited access for non-hostile vessels helped ease the immediate supply concerns. The volatility is raising concerns about inflation and also economic stability worldwide.
Sharp disagreements have emerged over whether Washington and Tehran engaged in negotiations or not amid ongoing Middle East crisis. On Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump said he had ordered a 5-day delay of planned strikes on Iranian power plants and energy facilities, citing very good and productive conversations over the past 2 days aimed at easing tensions in the Middle East. Iran, however, denied holding talks. Iranian Foreign Ministry's spokesperson Ismail Baghai said that while friendly countries had sent messages indicating U.S. interest in negotiations, Iran had not responded, and its stance on the Strait of Hormuz and conditions to end the war remains unchanged. The announcement came amid heightened regional tensions following joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iranian targets starting February 28, which prompted retaliatory attacks on Israeli and U.S. interests across the Middle East. Meanwhile, China has called for an immediate ceasefire, stressing relevant parties should immediately stop the hostility and return to the peaceful dialogue as soon as possible.
战事延宕，不符合任何一方利益，停火止战，停火对话是唯一的出路。中方对当前的局势不断升级外溢，冲击地区和国际和平稳定深感担忧，呼吁相关各方立即停火止战，尽快回到和平对话的轨道上来。
Qatar has also expressed support for diplomatic efforts to end the conflict. It says the ongoing Middle East war has stressed the Gulf state security system beyond its breaking point as Iran presses its campaign against the neighboring countries.
لكني أؤكد هنا أنه ليس هناك حاليا أي جهد قطري مباشر فيما يتعلق بوساطة بين الطرفين. تركيزنا حاليا ينصب بشكل كامل على الدفاع عن بلدنا والتعامل مع الخسائر الناتجة عن الهجمات المختلفة التي تعرضت لها دولة قطر، ولكن التواصل كما رأيتم من خلال ما قرأته قبل قليل، الاتصالات مع الدول الأخرى سواء على مستوى المنطقة أو دوليا، اللقاءات متعددة الأطراف التي تمت خلال الفترة الماضية.
The situation remains volatile as global attention focuses on the potential for renewed strikes, ongoing regional instability, and the wider impact on international energy markets. Meanwhile, Iranian missiles have created impacts in several areas of Tel Aviv in Israel, causing major building damages and at least 4 casualties.
From energy market volatility, we move to its direct impact on aviation, where airlines including United Airlines are cutting flights due to soaring fuel cost. The reductions are expected to disrupt travel and signal wider pressure on the industry.
Several airlines have announced reductions in scheduled flights as the ongoing conflict in the Middle East has driven up oil prices, which are posing a challenge to the global aviation industry. United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby announced the company will reduce its planned capacity by about 5% in the second and third quarters of 2026 to cope with soaring aviation fuel costs caused by high oil prices. The prices hold at current elevated levels. The company could face an extra $11 billion in annual fuel expenses. Air New Zealand has already implemented cuts, announcing it will reduce around 1,100 flights through early May 2026, equivalent to about 5% of its domestic and international scheduled services. The move is expected to impact roughly 44,000 passengers. Scandinavian Airlines has also confirmed plans to cancel around 1,000 flights in April 2026. In Vietnam, authorities have warned the local aviation sector to prepare for possible flight cuts in April due to the increasing risk of aviation fuel supply shortages. The fuel costs are one of the largest operating expenses for airlines. Recent market data shows benchmark prices jumping from the range of $85 to $90 per barrel to $150 to $200 per barrel in recent weeks. To offset pressures, several carriers including Qantas, Air France KLM, and Air India have implemented fare increases or higher fuel surcharges on various routes.
And from aviation challenges, we turn to energy cooperation as Sanai Takaichi and Donald Trump announced major investments in nuclear and gas projects. The deal highlights growing economic ties and a focus on long-term energy security.
After Thursday's meeting between Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi and US President Donald Trump, the two countries announced their plans to build nuclear reactors. The $40 billion project would seek to build nuclear reactors in Tennessee and Alabama in southeastern part of the US, and a $33 billion investment in natural gas power generation facilities in Pennsylvania and Texas in the northeastern and south central US respectively. The deal came after Tokyo agreed last year to invest $550 billion in the United States through the 2029 in return for lowering threatened tariffs by Washington to 15% from 25%.
重要鉱物につきましては、具体的プロジェクトに関する、協力や、南鳥島周辺の、海域にありますレアアースデーを含む海洋鉱物資源開発に関する協力などに関する3つの文書を取りまとめることができました。エネルギー分野では小型モジュール炉 SMR の建設を含む戦略的投資イニシアティブの第2次プロジェクトについて発表をしました。国際的な電力需要が急速に増大する中で、また中東情勢を含む現下の状況に照らしまして非常に重要だと考えております。で、中国
From global energy partnerships, we shift to international trade, where Australia and the European Union have finalized a sweeping free trade agreement. The deal is expected to boost exports and remove tariffs across key sectors. Australia and the European Union have agreed a sweeping free trade deal after 8 years of negotiations. The deal, worth about $10 billion Australian dollars, was with Australia's Prime Minister and the head of the European Commission, describing it as a mutual win-win. As well as removing almost all tariffs on trade, the two have also agreed to increase cooperation on defense and critical minerals. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described the deals as having a focus on collective resilience in a world that is deeply changing. Under the deal, almost all EU tariffs will be lifted on Australian agricultural products such as wine, fruit and vegetables, olive oil, seafood, most dairy products and wheat and barley. This will mean a saving of about 37 million Australian dollars for local wine producers and exporters, according to the Australian government. From global trade agreements, we move to corporate accountability in tech, where Elon Musk has been found liable for misleading investors. The ruling raises concerns about market influence and transparency among top executives.
A San Francisco jury found Elon Musk deliberately misled investors during his 2024 $44 billion takeover of Twitter. His public statements about Twitter's user metrics and hints of backing out of the deal were deemed intentionally misleading, causing Twitter stock to drop $3 to $8 per share. Musk had argued that people misinterpreted his tweets, but the jury rejected this defense. The case underscores the legal consequences of influencing markets with public statements, even for high-profile figures.
Now, from tech regulation, we move to the labour market, where the United Kingdom has recorded its highest unemployment rate in 5 years. Young people are being hit the hardest, while wage growth continues to slow.
The unemployment rate in the United Kingdom rose to 5.2% between November 2025 and January 2026, its highest level in around 5 years, according to the data released by the Office for National Statistics on Thursday. The increase was driven in part by a high number of unemployed young people aged 18 to 24, with the jobless rate for this group reaching 14%. Meanwhile, annual growth in employees' average total earnings, including bonuses, grew by 3.9% annually, or 0.7% in real terms after adjusting for inflation.
From employment trends, we shift to the future of work as artificial intelligence raises concerns about job security. Experts warn millions of roles could be reshaped, forcing workers to adapt.
1 in 6 jobs in France could be threatened by artificial intelligence within 5 years, according to a new study. Former translator Zilke Vesser, who left her job due to AI disruption, sees it as a wave which we could not stop.
Il y a comme une vague qui arrive sur nous et on peut rien faire pour l'arrêter en fait. Donc soit on accepte et on s'ouvre à autre chose, à d'autres possibilités, soit on essaye de lutter, mais pour moi, c'est une lutte qui est perdue d'avance.
Experts warn rapid automation in reshaping the workforce and raising concerns over job security and reskilling.
We now turn to regional cooperation as a new BIMSTEC Business Council aims to boost trade among member nations, including Nepal. The initiative is expected to strengthen connectivity and economic collaboration. A landmark initiative has been launched under the BIMSTEC framework to enhance regional trade and connectivity. The BIMSTEC Business Council will provide a platform for member nations to collaborate on investment and economic opportunities. The initiative marks a new chapter in connectivity and collaboration among the 7 member nations of BIMSTEC, including Nepal. The Council is designed to boost trade, investment, and business partnerships in the region. It will act as a dedicated platform to bring together industry leaders, policymakers, and entrepreneurs, providing opportunities to explore new economic avenues and enhance regional integration. Through this initiative, BIMSTEC nations aim to strengthen ties and drive sustainable growth across the Bay of Bengal region. From cooperation, we move to market trends where Singapore is seeing a rise in counterfeit gold amid soaring prices. The trend highlights growing demand and risk in secondary markets. Some gold dealers in Singapore are seeing a rise in counterfeit items in the market as elevated prices continue to drive demand. Since gold prices surged in January, one dealer said he has filed 50% more police reports compared to the same period last year after encountering suspicious sellers attempting to offload counterfeit items. The dealer said he sees up to 5 fake items a week, ranging from buyers seeking to verify their online purchases to individuals attempting to resell questionable gold. The increase comes as more buyers turn to alternative channels to get their hands on the precious metal. Gold prices have been rallying since early 2025, with strong momentum carrying into this year, driven by geopolitical tensions, central bank buying, and safe haven demand. This has fueled demand, particularly in secondary markets, such as online platforms and social media resale channels. From precious metals, we shift to the auto sector, where budget-friendly electric vehicles are taking center stage in Thailand. Automakers are targeting cost-conscious buyers despite economic uncertainty. Automakers have rolled out a heavy lineup of electric vehicles, EVs, and budget-friendly models despite geopolitical headwinds as the 47th Bangkok International Motor Show has commenced. Among the highlights are entry-level battery electric vehicles, BEVs, priced under about $12,000. The event also features a range of hybrid and plug-in hybrid vehicles alongside electric pickup trucks such as the Isuzu D-Max EV. Automakers admit that escalating tensions between the United States, Israel, and Iran are weighing heavily on the global economy and consumer sentiment. Coupled with stringent lending criteria from local financial institutions, car brands are bracing for another difficult year, with several projecting annual sales to remain flat compared to last year. From the auto industry, taking you to consumer trends, where China's exotic pet market continues to grow rapidly, but the trend is also raising concerns over animal welfare and regulation. Let's take a look.
Throngs of pet lovers from around China packed into large, bustling exhibition halls for an expo where exotic animals are more common than the typical feline or canine. As China's pet economy continues to evolve, the types of species that are being kept as pets are also expanding. The exotic pet market refers to the trade and sale of non-traditional or unusual animals that are kept as pets. In the year of the snake, pet stores specializing in snakes and other reptiles have emerged as hotspots for young people. The 2025 China Pet Industry White Paper estimates that approximately 17.07 million people in China are keeping exotic pets, with a market size nearing 10 billion yuan.
Taking you to Tomé and Principe, where the farmers there are restoring forests through cocoa farming. The initiative is improving livelihoods while protecting the environment.
In Sao Tome and Principe, a new generation of cocoa farmers is helping restore degraded ecosystems while improving livelihoods with support from food and agriculture organizations. Farmers rely on cocoa as their main income and are benefiting from training, fair trade access, and cooperative support. Since 2019, over 8,000 hectares of agroforestry land have been restored with a goal of reaching 36,000 by the year 2030. The initiative promotes sustainable cocoa farming alongside forest conservation, including tree planting and improved techniques. Overall, the project has empowered farmers to protect forests, strengthen incomes, and build a more sustainable cocoa industry.
And that's your Business Weekly Roundup. From energy shocks and rising costs to trade deals, innovation and changing job markets. This week has underscored the growing link between geopolitics, energy and economic performance. We'll continue to track these developments and what they mean for businesses and consumers around the world. Thank you for watching NTV World. I am Siksha Bhattrai. See you next week.
A day most unexpected, September 8, 2025. A youth uprising. And the destruction of September 9. Those 2 terrifying days will forever remain etched in Nepal's political history. the 9th of September, the Army Chief addresses the nation.
आन्दोलनरत समूहलाई आन्दोलनका कार्यक्रमहरू स्थगन गरी वार्ताको निमित्त आह्वान गर्दछौँ।
The country searched for one thing: a leader who was impartial, fearless, and widely accepted. In a nation that had already written history by appointing its first female Chief Justice, another historic milestone was achieved. Susila Karki became the country's first female executive head, the Prime Minister.
सेवा नगर्ने भनेर सक्दो हामीले के गर्यौं भने 6 महिना मात्रै अवधि त्यो भन्दा बढी नबस्ने कुनै हालतमा पनि हामीले कुरा यो आफ्ना काम कारबाही गरेर हामी चाहिँ मुक्त हुने र नयाँ आउने संसद नयाँ आउने मन्त्रीहरूलाई जिम्मेवारी र दायित्व सुम्पिने हाम्रो चाहिँ एउटा हामीले अठोट गरेका छौं। मलाई जहाँसम्म लाग्छ यो अठोटमा यहाँहरूको साथ नपाइकन सम्भव चाहिँ छैन।
Burnt state infrastructures, demoralized security institutions, a divided youth movement with anger and competing voices. The dreams of martyrs. And the silent concerns of the citizens, too fearful to speak. 8 years after retiring as the Chief Justice, Susila Karki faced a mountain of visible and invisible challenges at one of the most critical moments in the nation's history.
अहिले हामी के देखिरहेछौं भन्ने मैले अस्ति नै बोल्दा पनि कहीं भने हामी त अचानक जस्तो पो भएछौं। पोलिटिकल पार्टीले पनि गाली गर्छ, भरमारले गाली गर्छ, अहिले छोड भोलि छोड भन्छ। जेनजीले पनि आजै छोड भोलि छोड पछि छोड भन्छ। अब छोडौँ भने के छोडौँ? हामी त एकदम कस्तो भने पेन्डुलम जस्तो त्यही पनि सकस गरेर मेहनत गरेर बहुत हामीले एउटा धैर्य धारण गरेर हामी काम गर्दैछौँ।
Yet, even in such adversity, Karki stood tall and succeeded in restoring peace, laying the foundation for good governance, and rebuilding hope among the people. Karki's leadership saw the formation of a cabinet reflecting the aspirations of the Gen Z generation. Continuous dialogue with youth groups, and efforts to address the sentiments of the injured and the families of the martyrs.
मैले भनेको कुरा त हामी एकदम गर्न तत्पर छौँ, चाहन्छौँ र गर्छौँ पनि, हामीलाई लागेको छ, तर हामीले निकै लड्नुपर्छ।
An independent judicial commission was formed to investigate the movement. The report submitted by the Gauri Bahadur Karki-led commission was received towards the end of her tenure with a commitment to implement. Karki initiated dialogue with political parties and their leaders to rebuild a conducive political environment in the country. Karki's decisions were grounded in the constitution and rule of law. Her clarity in public communication and firm stance against pressure earned her widespread public trust.
कसैको प्रति म आक्षेप पनि लाउँदिन। मेरो कृपया यति अनुरोध छ, सबै निर्वाचनमा आइदिनुस्। सबै कुरोको रिस पोख्दा पोख्दै मुलुकै गुमाउने काम चाहिँ हामी नगरौँ। हामी छलफलमा छौँ, अझै पनि हामीसँग समय छ। अहिले जो 2-2.5 महिना बाँकी छ भने त्यो त लाख टाइम हो हामीसँग। त्यसलाई घण्टामा गर्नुस्। हामी घण्टामा काम गरिरहेछौँ भने
dialogue, cooperation, and coexistence, Karki successfully fulfilled the critical national responsibility of transferring power through elections and ensuring long-term democratic stability.
विधिको शासनको बहाली गर्ने, सुशासन दिने, सेवा प्रवाहलाई सुदृढ गर्ने र चाहिँ यो क्रममा हामीले हिंसा चाहिँ दोहोरिन नदिने, कुनै पनि हालतमा हिंसा दोहोरिन नदिने। हिंसा दोहोरियो अथवा कहीँ पनि रगतको थोपा मात्रै बग्यो भने पनि फेरि चाहिँ 23 र 24 गतेको जस्तो अवस्था आउन सक्छ। त्यसकारणले यसमा चाहिँ असाध्यै सावधान हुनुपर्छ। हिंसालाई जसरी पनि रोकथाम गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने मूल मन्त्र नै यही थियो। प्रधानमन्त्रीज्यूले एक थोपा रगत नबगिकन हामीले अहिले शासन सञ्चालन गर्नुपर्छ, चुनाव गराउनुपर्छ भनेर जे एउटा मान्यता मानक एउटा चाहिँ जे लक्ष्य दिनुभएको थियो त्यो लक्ष्य अनुसार गृह मन्त्रालयले काम गर्यो। हाम्रा सारा सुरक्षा
once seemed impossible, conducting national elections became a reality. Karki's commitment to keeping the transitional government neutral created a fair political and electoral environment. With free and fair elections as her primary mandate, the elections were conducted on time, without dispute, and with credibility. On March 5, 2026, the House of Representatives elections were successfully completed, paving the way for the transfer of power to a democratically elected government. Born from a movement demanding the rule of law, Karki's leadership consistently prioritized strengthening that very principle. Although formed under extraordinary circumstances, limiting its scope in addressing all public expectations, Karki's government remained focused on key areas directly affecting people's lives like health, education, drinking water, employment, language, art, and culture. From major national pride projects like the Kathmandu-Tarai Madhes Fast Track and the Melamchi Drinking Water Project to broader development challenges, Karki's leadership ensured active progress. Drawing from her judicial background as the Chief Justice, Karki enforced strict adherence to law, upheld zero tolerance towards corruption, and maintained transparency in decision-making, setting a distinctive standard for good governance. With inclusive and widely accepted elections, Karki's government successfully laid the foundation for stable governance rooted in democratic practice. As Prime Minister, Susila Karki became a symbol of integrity and courage. From leading the Supreme Court to leading the nation at a very critical moment of history, Karki's legacy stands as a proud chapter in global politics, especially in the story of women's leadership.
President Abraham Lincoln said many years ago, if you think that education is expensive, how much ignorance do you want to finance? Right.
Many of these economists now, they have a tech-based startups. And these tech-based startups, for them to even ideate and progress, you need ideas, you need people who have the experience as well as resources. I think that's exactly the space where you are an advantage. So I think Nepal should see this as an advantage and then think innovatively. You don't have to follow other country. You find what works for you, but goal is to make sure that is multiplying.
We are forgetting investing for the future. We are just handling the present illness, present poverty, present situation, somehow trying to manage it. But at the same time, that's where the vision comes in. The political or our people or the government, they also have to invest in future. They have to keep an eye on the future.
Our strategy is not producing job seekers, but producing job creators. That's our
Fantastic.
motto.
The university is producing job creators, not job seekers. Fantastic.
Since childhood, I always liked to go in a competition. Even I was in a high school, I done many competition in athletics or other things, and then I end up with MasterChef. I was winner of rematch in 2020 MasterChef UK Professionals. My all-time favorite, and I think all Nepali favorite, is the goat curry and rice, Mashu Bhat. I'm from Karjanaha village, district Siraha. When I was very small kid, I started working for a family, and same time I was studying as well. When I was 5 years old, my father passed away. When I was very young age, for us, food was survival food. Till SLC, I was in village, and then I went to India for work purpose, and then I started working in a 5-star hotel as a kitchen porter. Then I find my passion about the cooking, because I was seeing the chef, very nice, tidy, white jacket with a white hat, and then I decided I want to these guys, and I became a chef in a few months, and then working almost 7 years, and then I continued my study as well, and after 7 years I became an executive chef in 5-star hotel. In a master chef, I was cooking only Nepali food and introducing Nepali food, Nepali spices and Nepali technique, because Nepali food was never discovered to the world, and Nepal have a very good potential. The people never expected gundruk to be like this, and even wachipa, pite, burning feathers, chicken feathers, and marinating in chicken and cooking with rice. Also padam chal, that's a Himalayan rhubarb. This kind of things I cook in the master chef. I have also written a book called Ayla, A-Y-L-A, Ayla book. That's a recipe cookbook. During the master chef, I started Nepali cuisine. Before I was working in a Michelin star, French Michelin star, Indian Michelin star restaurant. That was not my Nepali cuisine, was not my cuisine. But now I can say proudly, Nepali cuisine is my cuisine. Still, I am promoting Nepali food, ethnic cuisine, cultural cuisine. Like if you see, we are in a Mithila Thali fish house. Mithila cuisine is very close to my heart. That reflects Tarai region food to the world, and this food was never promoted as well. And opening a Mithila restaurant and promoting Mithila cuisine. Mithila cuisine is very healthy. Mithila food have fermentation, freshness, seasonal vegetables, seasonal cookings. So lots of things came into Mithila cuisine. So I think world should know about this cuisine. I really want to serve Nepal via food. This is the third year I'm doing Nepali cuisine restaurant in Nepal, and almost 200 people working for me. If you want to be a chef, if you are confused to decide, I think this is the right time to do it. And if you are studying in abroad, I think Nepal have a very good potential for the business in a hospitality industry, because Nepal is a tourism-based country, and tourism always need a good hospitality, good restaurant, good food, and good hotel. Now I'm dreaming with open eyes. I want a Michelin star chef with Nepali food. Then any part of the world, I will be opening Michelin star Nepali restaurant.
I came from Biratnagar and am at a global stage on data and AI and finance. So I was born and brought up in a city called Biratnagar in the eastern part of Nepal. I was brought up in a typical middle-class Nepali family. I went to school in a normal Nepali school. I studied there until SLC in Biratnagar. As for my higher education, I did my undergrad in Australia. I went over to study quant finance at New York University. I did masters in financial engineering. When I remember my childhood, I used to like sports. Cricket was my thing. And I always liked numbers, patterns, logic. When I found quant finance, it kind of was a formalization of most of my interests that I had as a kid. I was recognized as a change maker. All I did was used mathematics and advanced computational sciences to create mathematical models to predict investments and risk, etc. There's nothing like that being done widely in the industry. As you see, it's a very recent phenomenon. That's how I kind of got into this spot of being recognized as the top 100 influential figures in AI. I remember this song, Hatne Hoina Dati Ladne, right?
The entrepreneurial ecosystem is pretty young, and it's very difficult in terms of many ways, like finding the funding, finding the suppliers, navigating the government like offices. It's pretty difficult. And I think one of the most difficult things was to try to do something that no one has ever done before. So running an education organization that does research and also does manufacturing. So there was a lot of learning curve and a lot of failures in the path. My name is Pavitra Bahadur Gautam. By education, I'm an electronics and communication engineer. I worked in robotics for a couple of years. I always had this curiosity of building things, trying things out. I always had this experimental mindset, and that took me closer to starting Karkhana along with my co-founders. So Karkhana acts as multiple entities and ideas at the same time. So we are a research organization, work with national and international universities to do research on pedagogy, lesson plan design. We actually also work as an innovation space where we design these materials that can actually be taken inside the classroom to make science slightly more fun, slightly more experiential. But we also act as a manufacturing space where we manufacture these materials and make sure these materials reach into the classroom. But they're not only reaching the classroom as just materials, but we also train the teachers, support them to convert their regular classroom into more of a land, like a classroom of a discovery. And we actually align all of these activities in the curriculum side. So it helps students study their science from the national curriculum side, but it teaches them in a far more experiential format. We started Karkhana as a maker space, as an innovation center, but slowly we realized that it's not the space that's required for innovation, but it's the mindset that's required for innovation. And we actually wanted to work on building the culture of experimentation in Nepal. Currently, we're working with 250 schools all across Nepal in more than 35 districts altogether, currently impacting around 1,500 classrooms where more than 42,000 children learn science in a more hands-on, experiential way, where they're not only learning science as a subject, but they're learning science as a mindset. So we usually find chemistry to be one of the most difficult subjects, right? So for example, when we're studying in school, so we have learned about atoms and how atoms are formed. We know that neutron, proton are in the center, the electrons are in the circle, like they are in orbits. So we actually give students this kind of model where they actually form atomic models. And they can actually form hydrogen, helium, lithium, iron. So they can form different atoms, but not only that, they can also understand how 3D structures of these atoms are maintained. So they can actually build these things out in the classroom, and they can actually compare these models with each other, and it's a lot of fun. Being inside a country like Nepal and being affected with things like earthquake, instability in the government, unstable education policies and policy at large, being affected with issues like COVID, blockade. So I think navigating all these things in a country that is developing its entrepreneurial ecosystem and trying to sustain the business in this kind of environment, I think you're largely firefighting every day. I hope to take this idea beyond Nepal as well over the course of the years. I think it's very viable in places in South Asia because we share a very similar socio-economic conditions where the science is still taught as a history lesson, as a subject that is needed to be learned to get done with the exams. So I think I want to challenge that idea that science is just a subject, but it's more of a mindset, it's a lifestyle. And when you adopt that kind of scientific thinking in your life, I think the life gets much experimental. pretty excited about this idea that we might be able to solve problems not in the classrooms of Nepal, but also beyond Nepal, exploring places like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, where we think that we can make an impact, and in places like Darjeeling, Sikkim, where we might go out and use Nepali language to reach and work as well. Education is a very old process. Being progressive also does not mean being anti-traditional. So trying to blend what has worked in the past, but also trying to integrate what is there in the future. So we're trying to make sure that the learning is fun, impactful, and relevant as well.
Senior-most member KC administers oath to newly elected HOR members, 240 out of 275 HOR members serving as first-time MPs. Balendra Shah endorsed as RSP's parliamentary party leader, likely to be appointed as the Prime Minister tomorrow. Bird flu outbreak hit thousands of poultry in Nepal's eastern Koshi province. Authorities enforce strict controls. Israel claims of killing Iran's Navy chief overseeing Strait of Hormuz blockade. Iran does not intend to negotiate, says its foreign minister. More than 20 bodies recovered as a bus plunges into a local Padma River in Bangladesh, many still missing. And Army and police secure second straight wins in PM Cup one-day cricket. Gandaki and Bagmati both defeated by 7 wickets. Hello there, I'm Smita Gising Tamang and this is NTV World News. And now the news in detail. Newly elected members of the Nepal's House of Representatives took the oath of office and secrecy today. Senior-most member of the House of Representatives, Arjun Narsingh Kesi of Nepali Congress, administered the oath of office and secrecy to fellow HOR members amidst a ceremony today. The oath of office and secrecy ceremony of the members of the House of Representatives was held at the multi-purpose hall of the newly constructed Parliament building in Singhadarbar. In the March 5 HOR election, Rashtriya Swatantra Party came first with 182 seats, while Nepali Congress stood second with 38, CPN UML won 25 seats, Nepali Communist Party NCP 17, Shram Sanskriti Party 7, and Rashtriya Prajatantra Party RPP won 5 seats. We bring more on the oath-taking ceremony of the newly elected members of the House of Representatives in our issue of the day segment later in the bulletin. Now, Balendra Shah has been elected parliamentary party leader of Rashtriya Swatantra Party RSP. A central committee meeting of the party held today unanimously elected Shah as its parliamentary party leader. A proposal was presented by RSP chairperson Rabi Lamichhane to elect party's senior leader Shah as the parliamentary party leader in the meeting. The proposal was passed unanimously, according to RSP spokesperson Manish Jha. Shah is likely to take the oath as Prime Minister on Friday, following his endorsement as parliamentary party leader by his party meeting. Thousands of chickens have died across Nepal's eastern districts of Jhapa, Morang and Sunsari in a bird flu outbreak, prompting strict restrictions on poultry movement. Affected farms have been sealed and infected birds, eggs, feed and equipment destroyed as part of containment efforts. Delayed testing and limited biosecurity at farms allowed the virus to spread rapidly, with thousands of birds culled to contain it. It is said preliminary testing is done locally in Biratnagar, with samples sent to Kathmandu to confirm highly pathogenic avian influenza in chickens. We shall cover more on the spread of the bird flu in our cover story segment later in the bulletin. Israel says it has killed an Iranian Navy chief overseeing the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's busiest oil shipping channels. Defense Minister Israel Katz says Alireza Tangsiri was directly responsible for the effective closure of the strait and has been blown up. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said the Strait of Hormuz is closed only to enemies, with the Middle East war having all but shut the vital oil and gas shipping route. He also said that Iran does not plan to negotiate with the United States after US President Donald Trump said Washington had proposed a peace plan. US President Donald Trump, meanwhile, says Iran has been militarily obliterated and its negotiators have been pleading to make a deal. Rescue teams in Bangladesh, including Navy divers, are searching for and recovering victims after a bus plunged into the Padma River at a ferry crossing in Goalanda, around 65 kilometers west of Dhaka. The bus was carrying around 40 to 50 passengers. While many passengers managed to escape, more than 20 bodies have been retrieved so far, and authorities continue efforts to locate any missing individuals. Emergency services have urged caution at river crossings as investigations into the cause of the accident proceed. Nepal's departmental teams Tribhuvan Army Club and Nepal Police Club secured their second consecutive victories in the Prime Minister Cup one-day national cricket tournament on Thursday. At Upper Mulpani ground, Nepal Police Club defeated Bagmati province by 7 wickets, powered by a century from Shankar Rana. Chasing a target of 266 runs, police completed the total in 44 hours, losing 3 wickets. Rana scored 116 runs off 128 balls to anchor the chase. In another match played today, Tribhuvan Army Club beat Gandaki province by 7 wickets. Chasing a target of 210 runs, Army reached the total in 34 hours at the loss of 3 wickets. The win marks Army's second consecutive victory in the tournament, having earlier defeated Nepal Police Club. Nepal's newly elected lawmakers have taken the oath of office at Singhadarbar, marking the start of a new parliamentary chapter shaped by a wave of young and first-time representatives. However, beyond the ceremony, questions are already emerging over whether a strong mandate can translate into effective governance. In today's issue of the day, we bring you ground reports, expert insight and public reaction as expectations run high and scrutiny begins after this break. You're with NTV World and this is the News Hour. And now the issue of the day. Newly elected members of Nepal's House of Representatives took their oath of office in secrecy in a mass swearing-in ceremony at Singhadarbar. The composition of the lower house reflects a major generational shift with a large number of first-time and young lawmakers entering parliament. Siksha Patrai takes a look.
Ma muluk ra janta prati purna wafadar rahi सत्यनिष्ठापूर्वक प्रतिज्ञा गर्छु.
Newly elected members of Nepal's House of Representatives have taken their oath of office and secrecy in a mass swearing-in ceremony marking the formal beginning of the new parliamentary term. The ceremony was held at the multipurpose hall in Singhadarbar, where the senior-most member Arjunar Singh Kesi of Nepali Congress administered the oath to fellow lawmakers. Kesi had earlier been sworn in by President Ramchandra Paudel. The oath-taking follows constitutional provisions under Articles 99 and 91(5) of the Constitution of Nepal, as well as Clause 75 of the House of Representatives Member Election Act 2074. Looking at the composition of 275-member House, a significant generational shift can be seen this time. The election held on March 5 elected 240 new faces from first-past-the-post as well as proportional representation system, accounting for 87.35% of the total composition. Only 35 members have returned for second or more term as lawmakers this time around. The new political makeup follows the elections in which Rashtriya Swatantra Party emerged as the largest force with 182 seats, followed by the Nepali Congress with 38, CP and UML with 25, Nepali Communist Party with 17, Shram Samskriti Party with 7, and the Rashtriya Prajatantra Party with 5. The large presence of first-time and young lawmakers is being seen as a major generational shift in Nepal's parliamentary politics, alongside increased representation of lingual and regional diversity.
275 lawmakers, a near supermajority, and a public that has run out of patience. Today at Singapore, Nepal's new members of parliament took their oath of office. But as the ceremony ends, the scrutiny begins. Our reporter Sabika Shrestha brings you a closer observation.
The faces are new. The expectations are unprecedented. After a landslide victory, this parliament carries the weight of a generation that bypassed traditional power blocks to demand a functional state. With a 182-seat majority, the era of coalition excuses is over. The new government, to be led by Prime Minister Balendra Shah, no longer faces the hurdle of parliamentary numbers, only the hurdle of delivery. But the transition from street activism to the halls of Singapore is fraught with structural traps. Analysts are already setting the clock.
There is a clear majority. We're hopeful, and we should be, that there will be this political stability that is extremely important for Nepal. But at the same time, the fact that there is no strong opposition, and the fact that there are subtle factions inside the party, those are also issues of concern. So, but at the same time, because we have for the first time we have almost around 40% of youth entering the parliament. So I am hopeful, and I think that there'll be a lot of innovation and a lot of creativity in politics for the first time in Nepal.
Numerically speaking, the opposition is not going to be very strong. Traditionally, House belongs to the opposition. So it will be incumbent upon the government to keep the House running by providing it with regular business and giving ample opportunity to the opposition in whatever strength they may be, giving them an ample opportunity to sort of raise voices. And the opposition also may not just be very critical, can also be complimentary, but that all depends on how the government, which has a very strong presence, overwhelming presence, should I say, in the House. I mean, how does it act? So in response to that, we will have to see how things unfold.
While the streets celebrate a historic shift, the transition from local to national power remains under a shadow of doubt.
His term as the mayor of Kathmandu was an average term. He has not done anything significant, yet he was able to give hope to the public. So this vote in the name of Balendra Shah for RSP is also the vote for hope. So in that sense, he has a lot of pressure because there's a lot of hope, high hopes from him. So it will be interesting to see how Balendra Shah takes the government forward, because I think it will be very premature to comment on the way he will be working, because we should at least give him his first 100 days.
Public sentiment reflects both hope and accountability. A young voter in Kathmandu remarked, "Unlike the passive electorates of the past, this generation of voters remain in a state of constant watch."
के राम्रो काम गर्नु छ कि भन्ने हो। यदि जनताको हितमा काम भयो भने त खासमा प्रतिपक्ष त हामी जनता पनि प्रतिपक्षमै हो नि त। अब जनताको हितमै काम भयो भने चाहिँ त्यो नहोला भन्न सक्यो हैन। अब फेरि पनि पहिलाकै रिपिट भयो भने चाहिँ हामी पनि प्रतिपक्ष नै हो। उहाँहरु अब बाँकी रहेको उम्मेदवारहरु पनि
The oath taken today is more than a formality. It is a contract. In a nation where the old guard was dismantled in weeks, the new wave knows its tenure is tied to immediate, measurable change.
As the new lawmakers take charge from today, the spotlight now shifts from their personality to their performance and delivery. Whether the new lawmakers will be able to meet public expectations or will they again repeat the old mistakes, this is yet to be seen. For now, public seeks more work. Sabika Shrestha with camera person Samir Thapa reporting for NTV World.
While the public celebrates the dawn of a new political era, experts say that a clear majority alone is insufficient if it operates within a weakened or inefficient administrative system. Constitutional and governance experts have cautioned that a historic electoral mandate is only effective if supported by functional bureaucratic machinery.
विधिको शासन कानुनको शासनमा कानुनको रीत पुर्याउनु पर्ने हुनाले राजनीतिले एउटा कोर्स लिन चाहिरहेको छ, सुशासन दिन चाहिरहेको छ। विगतको सरकारहरूले मतदाताप्रति जिम्मेवार भएनन्, परिवर्तनको अनुभूति भएन, लोकतन्त्रले परिणाम दिनुपर्ने परिणाम दिन सकेन, सुशासन विकास समृद्धि देखिएन भन्ने जुन किसिमको चाहिँ मागका आधारमा अहिले परिवर्तन भएको छ। त्यसैले सबैभन्दा पहिले के गर्नुपर्ने अवस्था छ भने विद्यमान ऐन कानुनहरूमा आफ्नो इच्छा शक्ति कार्यान्वयन गर्न, सुशासन कायम गर्न के ऐन कानुनका व्यवस्थाहरू बाधक छन् त्यसको सूक्ष्म अध्ययन गरेर त्यसलाई चाहिँ संशोधन गर्ने, खारेज गर्ने। बहुसंख्यक सदस्यहरूले विधायिकाकै प्रक्रियाबाट ऐन बनाउने, तत्काल विधायिकाबाट सम्भव भएन भने पनि अध्यादेश ल्याएर भए पनि यो कानुनी अप्ठ्याराहरूलाई पहिले मिलाउनु पर्ने पहिलो चुनौती हो, यो आवश्यक छ। सुशासनका निम्ति जति पनि अनियमितता र भ्रष्टाचार भएको छन् त्यो चाहिँ निवारण गर्ने सम्बन्धमा आवश्यक कारबाही गर्नुपर्ने, जनताले अनुभूति हुने गरी गर्नुपर्ने दोस्रो कुरा छ। सेवाग्राहीले सहजै रूपमा सेवा प्राप्त गर्न सकिरहेको छैनन्, यसलाई सरलीकृत गर्नेतर्फ चाहिँ प्रशासनमा सुधार गर्नुपर्छ। अहिलेका जुन किसिमका चाहिँ मध्य पूर्वमा भएका जुन घटनाहरूले कालोबजारी बढ्ने अवस्थाहरू छन्, अत्यावश्यक वस्तु र सेवाहरूको चाहिँ अहिले कमी हुने अवस्था छ, आम नागरिकले त्यसबाट प्रभावित हुन सक्छन्। त्यसैले बजारको अनुगमन गर्ने, कालोबजारी हुन नदिने, अत्यावश्यक वस्तुहरू चाहिँ उपभोक्तामा सहज रूपमा पहुँचको व्यवस्थालाई पनि यो सरकारले गर्नुपर्छ। संसदको प्रभावकारिता, कार्यपालिकाको जवाफदेहिता, न्यायपालिकाको निष्पक्षता र खबरपालिकाको पहरेदारिता, उन्नत चेतना नागरिकको र निरन्तर सरकार र जनताको संवाद भइरह्यो भने त्यो उन्नत लोकतन्त्र हुन्छ। हामी उन्नत लोकतन्त्रतर्फ हाम्रो गन्तव्य चाहिँ छ, तर हाम्रो बीचमा हामी त्यो अभ्यास गर्न नसकेका हुनाले लोकतान्त्रिक व्यवस्थामा विभिन्न विकृतिहरू देखा परेका छन्। यसलाई अन्त्य गर्नुपर्ने अहिलेको सरकारको मुख्य दायित्व हो। चुनौतीहरू छन्, समस्याहरू छन्, त्यसलाई व्यवस्थापन गरेर अगाडि बढ्नुपर्छ।
With new MPs poised to take their seats in the House of Representatives, we have asked the general public whether they are optimistic about the prospects for political stability. Here's what they had to say in today's Public Pulse.
आम नेपाली जनताहरूले एउटा स्थायी सरकार बनोस् भनेर जुन आशा भरोसा राखेर यो राष्ट्रवादी पार्टीलाई 2/3 नजिकको सिट जिताएर पठाएका छन् र नेपाली जनताको आशा विश्वास के छ भने यो सरकार स्थायी होस्, जनताका भावना अनुसार कामहरू गरून्, जनताका युवाका जेनजीका मागहरूलाई सम्बोधन गरोस् भन्ने जनताहरूको चाहना छ।
अबको न्यू गभर्नमेन्ट चाहिँ मलाई लाग्छ अब युथको न्यू जेनेरेसनको भइरहेको छ, राम्रो हुन्छ, अब डेभलपमेन्ट राम्रो हुन्छ, यो पर्मानेन्ट हुन्छ होला। अब यो गभर्नमेन्ट पर्मानेन्ट होस्, अब सबैको इच्छा त्यही थियो, त्यसैको लागि हामी लड्यौँ, अब सफल हुन पनि लागेको छ।
नयाँ अनुहारहरू छ र सत्ता पक्षमा जो होस्, सत्ता पक्षमा पनि धेरै अब अहिले बालनको सरकारमा नयाँ जो सांसदहरू हुनुहुन्छ होइन, जहाँसम्म लाग्छ काम राम्रो हुन्छ देशमा। अब
एउटा विज्ञ टोली, एउटा टिम र साथसाथै देशलाई कानुनी रूपमा र यो जुन अहिले स्थिति छ नि भयावह स्थिति, यसलाई चाहिँ केही न्यूनीकरण, केही सुधारित गरेर लैजान्छ भन्ने लाग्छ मलाई।
जनताले चुनेर पठाएको नेताहरू अब त्यहाँ सदनमा गएर लड्ने, घेर्ने त्यस्तो चाहिँ गर्न पाइँदैन। किन भन्दाखेरि हामी बाहिर नागरिक समाज छ नि त, यत्रो नागरिक समाज छ नि त, त्यसले गर्दाखेरि हामीले पनि त हेर्छौँ नि। हामीले हेरेरै त अब यो जनताले जिताएको हो नि त।
विरोध पनि हुन्छ, 90% विरोध हुन्छ, 10% नहुनु राम्रो जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई।
आउने जेनेरेसन नयाँले चाहिँ पार्टी सम्हाल्नुपर्छ, केही न केही चेन्ज हुन्छ होला भन्ने हाम्रो सबैको आशा छ। त्यही नै
अहिलेको जेनेरेसनको यो सरकार, यो राष्ट्रपाको अहिले बहुमत 2/3 बहुमत लिएर जुन अहिले आइरहेको छ, यो मलाई लाग्छ मेरो विचारमा उहाँहरू एकदमै सबै सहमत भएर एकजुट भएर लङ लास्टिङ केही सरकार गर्नुहुन्छ जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई।
And that wraps up our issue of the day segment. On to the next segment now. A bird flu outbreak in eastern Nepal has killed thousands of chickens across Jhapa, Borang and Sunsari, prompting strict containment measures and farm closures. Meanwhile, infected crows at Tribhuvan University in Kirtipur have tested positive for multiple strains, raising concerns over wider spread. More on this in our cover story of the day. And now we turn into our cover story of the day. Local authorities have imposed strict restrictions on the movement of poultry and poultry products after thousands of chickens died across Nepal's eastern districts of Jhapa, Morang and Sunsari in a bird flu outbreak. Technical experts say delays in testing may have allowed the virus to spread rapidly across the three districts. Affected areas include Damak in Jhapa, Urlabari, Biratnagar, Sundarharaicha and Katahari in Morang, and Itahari sub-metropolitan city and Gari rural municipality in Sunsari. Thousands of birds have been culled to contain the outbreak. The Biratnagar laboratory conducts only preliminary testing for avian influenza virus AIV, so samples must be sent to the central laboratory in Kathmandu to confirm highly pathogenic avian influenza HPAI. It is said reports from Kathmandu take up to 4 days, and in the meantime, lack of biosecurity measures at affected farms contributed to the rapid spread of the disease across the three districts. Following the outbreak, affected poultry farms have been sealed, and infected birds along with eggs, poultry feed, crates and cartons have been destroyed as part of containment efforts. Meanwhile, bird flu has been confirmed among crows found dead on the premises of Tribhuvan University in Kirtipur as well. Authorities from Kirtipur municipality and the Animal Health Department collected and safely disposed of dozens of carcasses after laboratory tests confirmed infection. Officials say samples from the dead birds tested positive for both H1N1 and H9 strains of avian influenza. With no other bird species have been found affected so far, experts warn that controlling the spread is challenging due to the free movement of wild birds. Local authorities have issued a public notice restricting the transport of poultry feed in the area as a precautionary measure. And that concludes our cover story segment. Now the remaining updates. Prime Minister Sushila Karki has expressed satisfaction that the country is moving forward in a new political direction following the successful conduct of elections in a free, fair and secure environment. In an address to the nation, the Prime Minister thanked political parties, candidates, the Election Commission Nepal and security agencies for ensuring the polls held on schedule despite challenging circumstances.
अहिले म केही सन्तुष्टि र धेरै आशा बोकेर बिदा माग्दैछु। हामी सबैलाई स्मरण होला 2082 भदौ 23 र 24 को युवाहरूको अगुवाईमा भएको जनआन्दोलन पछिको जटिल परिस्थिति, 76 जनाको निधन, 2600 भन्दा बढी घाइते, 84 अर्बको क्षति भएको त्यो समय अकल्पनीय थियो। त्यस्तो अवस्थामा वातावरण सहज बनाउँदै सुरक्षा सङ्गठनको मनोबल उकास्दै प्रशासनलाई चलायमान र राजनीतिक दलहरूलाई निर्वाचनका लागि तयार गराउनु परेको थियो। सरकार गठन भएको पहिलो हप्तादेखि नै हामीले निर्वाचन आयोगसँग समन्वय गर्दै स्वतन्त्र, निष्पक्ष र भयरहित वातावरणमा निर्वाचन सम्पन्न गराउन निरन्तर प्रयास गर्यौं। आयोग पनि सरकारको चाहना र मुलुकको आवश्यकता बमोजिम घोषित मितिमै निर्वाचन सम्पन्न गर्ने कार्ययोजनामा अघि बढ्यो र फागुन 21 गते तोकिएकै दिन एकै खेपमा ऐतिहासिक रूपमा शान्तिपूर्ण र स्वच्छ निर्वाचन सम्पन्न भयो।
CPN-UML chairperson KP Sharma Oli has directed lawmakers elected from his party to perform with determination in favor of the country and the people, being not disappointed from the recent poll results. At a program organized at the party's central office, Chessel, immediately after the newly elected House of Representatives members took the oath of office in secrecy, Oli directed his parliamentarians in both the HOR and National Assembly to work keeping the public interest and nation building at the center. The former Prime Minister recalled his works in favor of the country and the people and directed lawmakers to work to strengthen the country's path to prosperity.
वास्तवमा अग्रगमनको राजनीति, शान्तिको राजनीति हामी गरिरहेका छौं। धेरै सजिलो छैन यो राजनीति यस ढंगले अगाडि बढाउन, तर हामी त्यसै गरी अगाडि बढिरहेका छौं।
Nepali Congress has termed the report of an inquiry commission led by Gauri Bahadur Karki as incomplete. Speaking at a press conference in Sanipa, party spokesperson Devaraj Chalisay said the report appears to overlook key developments from the September 9 incident. He noted that while the commission addressed aspects of the September 8 movement, important details remain unexamined. The party has announced plans to form a committee of legal experts, governance specialists and youth representatives to review the findings. The Congress says it will develop its official position after studying both the Commission's report and submissions by the National Human Rights Commission. Nepal has begun issuing climbing permits for the spring mountaineering season, signaling the start of one of its most important tourism periods. According to the Department of Tourism Nepal, permits have so far been issued for 7 peaks, including Annapurna 1 and Amadablam. A total of 82 climbers from 10 expedition teams representing 25 countries have received permits, with the largest number coming from Germany. The government has already collected over 18.4 million rupees in revenue from the permits issued to date. Officials say Annapurna 1 has drawn the highest number of climbers so far, reflecting strong early interest in Nepal's Himalaya spring climbing season. Eastern Nepal possesses largely untapped tourism potential by its diverse geography and rich indigenous cultures. The region emphasizes adventure and cultural tourism, with key destinations including Dharan, Dhankuta and Ilam. In recent days, Dhankuta, often referred to as the gateway to the mid-hills of Eastern Nepal, has been gaining popularity among visitors. Unique community homestay experiences that blend adventure with the rich indigenous Art Paharia culture stand out as a major attraction. Regina Rai with our local correspondent Bidur Khawas from Dhankuta brings a report.
A unique cultural destination nestled in the rural landscape of Dhankuta, Nepal, where visitors do more than just stay. They immerse themselves in the deeply rooted lifestyle of Eastern Nepal. In recent years, the community homestay operated by the Art Paharia community in Saule Sipting has emerged as a hub for culture, traditional cuisine and sustainable tourism. Currently managed through the active involvement of 5 households, the homestay plays a vital role in preserving the identity and heritage of Art Paharia people while promoting local tourism. Guests are served locally grown rice, lentils and vegetables along with distinctive traditional dishes such as wachipa, dule achar, pico, selroti, the traditional drink called tongba, and radish pico. Special festive delicacies during wadang meat, combined with pork, local alcohol, and seasonal harvest, further enrich the cultural experience. Beyond cuisine, the local way of life itself. Beyond cuisine, the local way of life serves as a major attraction for the visitors there. Visitors can actively participate in traditional practices such as making leaf plates called duna topori, weaving mat or gundri, and crafting household items from natural materials. These hands-on activities add a meaningful and memorable dimension to the visit.
सेवा सुविधाहरू भनेको त्यस्तै हो, खानापिना लोकल खानेकुराहरू र दोस्रो कुरा अब हाम्रो सिजन अनुसारको फलफुल टिपेर खाने पनि उयो छ, राखेका छौँ कार्यक्रमहरू। अनि चायमा हाम्रो सांस्कृतिक कार्यक्रमहरू देखाउन पाइन्छ र अनि हाम्रो अवलोकनको लागिलाई यो गुन्द्री पिर्का पातको टपरा दुना यस्तै खालकोहरू हेर्न गर्नसम्म पाइन्छ।
The homestay has already welcomed over 100 visitors from countries including the UK, the Netherlands, Australia, and India. Adding to its charm, guests may also have the opportunity, depending on the season, to pick and enjoy fresh oranges and avocados directly from the garden. Blending tradition, authentic flavors, and heartfelt hospitality, the At Paharia homestay in Dhankuta is steadily emerging as a promising destination for both domestic and international travelers. Rosina Rai with Bidur Khawas from Dhankuta reporting for NTV World.
The annual chariot procession of Setu Machindranath has kicked off from today in Kathmandu. The procession begins every year on the 8th day of Chaitra Shukla Ashtami of Nepali lunar calendar. The festival of Setu Machindranath, a deity revered by both Hindus and Buddhists, lasts for 5 days till the full moon. Machindranath is also worshipped as a god of good harvest and one who removes evil, protects from premature death, and safeguards people from unrest and insecurity. On the first day of the festival, the idol was taken from Jamal to Asan, while on the second day, tomorrow, it will be toured from Asan to Hanumandoka, and on the third day to Logan in Kathmandu. People participate in the procession believing that worshipping Machindranath invites goddess Lakshmi into their homes, bringing happiness, peace and prosperity. Today, Nepal observed the festival of Chaite Dashai, observed with devotion across the country. The festival marks the worship of Navadurga on the 8th day of the bright fortnight in the Hindu month of Chaitra, drawing large numbers of devotees to temples from early morning. In the Kathmandu Valley, major Shakti Peeths such as Guheshwari Temple, Dakshin Kali Temple and Maiti Devi Temple have witnessed heavy crowds of worshippers. Considered the most significant Dasai festival after the main autumn celebration, the day holds deep religious and cultural importance. Devotees also link the occasion to the victory of Lord Rama over Ravana, offering prayers for peace, prosperity and protection within their families. Before we check more from the international front, let's have a quick recap of the headlines. Senior-most member KC administers oath to newly elected HOR members, 240 out of 275 HOR members serving as first-time MPs. Balendra Shah endorsed as RSP's parliamentary party leader, likely to be appointed as the Prime Minister tomorrow. Bird flu outbreak hits thousands of poultry in Nepal's eastern Koshi province. Authorities enforce strict controls. Israel claims of killing Iran's Navy chief overseeing Strait of Hormuz blockade. Iran does not intend to negotiate, says its foreign minister. More than 20 bodies recovered as a bus plunges into a local Padma river in Bangladesh, many still missing. And Army and police secure second straight wins in PM Cup one-day cricket. Gandaki and Bagmati both defeated by 7 wickets. Foreign Minister Jean-Noel Barrot held preparatory talks with his Indian counterpart Subramaniam Jaishankar ahead of the Group of 7 G7 foreign ministers meeting being held near Paris. The meeting, hosted by France's G7 presidency at the Abaya de Vaude Cerné, brings together foreign ministers from the 7 major advanced economies: Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States, along with the European Union and invited partner countries such as India. Officials said the agenda will focus on ongoing geopolitical crisis, including the war in Ukraine and tensions in the Near and Middle East, maritime and energy security, and efforts to uphold global governance structures amid rising instability. Gathered in Helsinki for the Joint Expeditionary Force JEF Summit, 10 European leaders discussed Ukraine and the continent's security with a focus on Russia's shadow fleet of oil tankers. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said Putin is rubbing his hands at the war in the Gulf and the rising oil prices, adding that the UK is now able to board sanctioned vessels that are passing through their waters.
Putin is rubbing his hands at the war in the Gulf and the rising oil prices. And that is why, in my strong view, we should go after the shadow fleet even harder. These old, dilapidated ships carry 75% of Russia's oil, and they are helping to fund Putin's war and posing an unacceptable safety and environmental risk. And we discussed that.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping in China on 14 to 15 May after delaying the landmark trip amid the U.S.-Israel war with Iran. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed the dates of Trump's visit, telling reporters that President Xi had understood and accepted the request to postpone the trip.
Also, I'm pleased to announce that President Trump's meeting and a long-awaited meeting with President Xi in China will now take place in Beijing on May 14th and 15th. First Lady Melania and President Trump will also host President Xi and Madam Peng for a reciprocal visit in Washington, D.C. at a later date to be announced.
This would be the first visit to China by a U.S. president in nearly 10 years. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Pyongyang on an official visit, during which the two leaders exchanged ceremonial gifts and held bilateral discussions aimed at strengthening political and economic ties. Lukashenko presented Kim with an assault rifle and traditional Belarusian products, while Kim gifted Lukashenko a sabre, an ornate vase, and a gold commemorative coin. The visit also featured a series of commemorative events highlighting the diplomatic engagement between Minsk and Pyongyang. It is said the exchange of gifts and talks underscore both countries' efforts to solidify bilateral relations despite international scrutiny and the ongoing geopolitical isolation faced by North Korea. India's parliament has passed a controversial bill that seeks to change how transgender people are legally recognized and their right to self-identify amid protests by opposition parties and the LGBTQ community. The government says the changes will make welfare benefits more accessible and strengthen an existing law against exploitation and trafficking. However, critics warn it could exclude many transgender, non-binary and gender-fluid people. The legislation was approved by both houses this week and now needs the president's assent to become law. In 2014, India's Supreme Court recognized transgender people as a third gender and affirmed their right to self-identify. Despite legal protections, many transgender people in India continue to face discrimination and limited access to education, healthcare and formal employment, often relying on traditional or informal forms of work. Tourists and local residents flocked to the tidal basin this week to view the cherry blossom trees approaching their peak bloom, continuing a century-old tradition that has become a hallmark of the U.S. capital's spring season. More than 3,000 cherry trees were gifted to the United States by Japan over 100 years ago, and they remain a central feature of the tidal basin's landscape, attracting thousands of visitors annually. City officials are monitoring crowds and implementing safety measures to manage heavy foot traffic during the peak bloom period. The annual cherry blossom display has become both a cultural celebration and a significant driver for tourism in Washington, D.C., drawing visitors from across the country and abroad. We're going for another short breather here. Business updates coming up next.
A Los Angeles jury has found Meta and YouTube liable for harming a young woman through the addictive design of their social media platforms. In a historic decision, the court ordered the companies to pay $3 million in damages. A lawsuit argued the platform's algorithms were designed to be harmful. Outside the courthouse, the plaintiff's attorney called the verdict a huge message that these companies can no longer hide from the consequences of their design.
I feel like what we're about here is something beyond just trying to make a buck, beyond just trying to help Kaylee. I feel like we're about something that is incredibly socially important and responsible. And I feel like we've made a great step forward. And I am thankful to God.
The ruling is being seen as a major victory for critics of big tech and a potential blueprint for thousands of similar lawsuits now pending nationwide. Whereas Meta and YouTube say they plan to appeal. European Union lawmakers have approved a key tariff deal with the United States, a major step toward a trade agreement first reached last summer. The EU will cut tariffs on certain U.S. imports, setting most at 15%, while adding safeguards such as linking steel and aluminum reductions to similar U.S. actions. The deal still requires approval from EU member states before it takes effect. The vote signals the EU's commitment to its trade promises, even as it works to diversify global trade with new deals in South America, India, and Australia. Kremlin economic envoy Kirill Dmitriev says Ukraine's attack on Russia could push global oil prices even higher, as surges from the Middle East conflict add pressure on markets. Speaking at a business forum in Moscow, Dmitriev, a top Russian negotiator in the Ukraine conflict, called the disruptions temporary difficulties, but warned they could lead to bigger price increases overall.
Все видят, что Украина фактически пытается сорвать и сделать энергетический кризис еще хуже. Потому что вот сегодня вышла важная статья в Блумберге, что администрация Трампа уже обсуждает сценарий, когда нефть будет $200 за баррель. И, безусловно, Россия находится в сильнейшей позиции, потому что мы мощнейший производитель не только нефти и газа, но и удобрений. А сейчас начинается кризис на рынке удобрений и агросектора.
He stressed that Russia remains in a strong position as a major producer of oil, gas, and fertilizers.
Now the sports update. European soccer's governing body UEFA said it has fined Benfica €40,000 for what it called racist and/or discriminatory behaviour by supporters during their Champions League match against Real Madrid last month. Additional penalties imposed for actions by fans included a fine of €25,000 for objects thrown during the match and one of €8,000 for the use of a laser pointer. Assistant coach Pedro Machado was also suspended for one game for unsporting conduct. UEFA opened an investigation into the incident and provisionally suspended Prestiani for the return leg in Madrid the week after, where Real won 2-1 to seal a 3-1 aggregate victory. The International Olympic Committee (IOC) said it was reintroducing genetic testing for gender to determine eligibility for any female category event, beginning with the 2028 Los Angeles Games. The IOC chief, Kirsty Coventry, unveiled its new policy for what it said was to protect the female category as part of its initiative to have a universal rule for competitors in female elite sports.
The policy that we have announced is based on science, and it has been led by medical experts with the best interests of athletes at its heart. The scientific evidence is very clear. Male chromosomes give performance advantages in sports that rely on strength, power, or endurance. At the Olympic Games, even the smallest margins can be the difference between victory and defeat. So it's absolutely clear that it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category.
And now the weather updates, first from Nepal and then from across the world. This brings us to the end of our news bulletin, but before we wrap up, a reminder about top stories. Senior-most member KC administers oath to newly elected HOR members, 240 out of 275 HOR members serving as first-time MPs. Balendra Shah endorsed as RSP's parliamentary party leader, likely to be appointed as the Prime Minister tomorrow. Bird flu outbreak hits thousands of poultry in Nepal's eastern Koshi province. Authorities enforce strict controls. Israel claims of killing Iran's Navy chief overseeing Strait of Hormuz blockade. Iran does not intend to negotiate, says its foreign minister. More than 20 bodies recovered as a bus plunges into a local Padma river in Bangladesh, many still missing. And Army and police secure second straight wins in PM Cup one-day cricket. Gandaki and Bagmati both defeated by 7 wickets. And that's it for this edition of NTV World News Hour. Do join us through our social media and get the latest updates from our official website, nepaltelevision.com. Thank you for staying with us. Good night.
President Abraham Lincoln said many years ago, if you think that education is expensive, how much ignorance do you want to finance? Right.
Many of these economists now, they have a tech-based startups. And these tech-based startups, for them to even ideate and progress, you need ideas, you need people who have the experience as well as resources. I think that's exactly the space where you are an advantage. So I think Nepal should see this as an advantage and then think innovatively. You don't have to follow other country. You find what works for you, but goal is to make sure that is multiplying.
We are forgetting investing for the future. We are just handling the present illness, present poverty, present situation, somehow trying to manage it. But at the same time, that's where the vision comes in. The political or our people or the government, they also have to invest in future. They have to keep an eye on the future.
Our strategy is not producing job seekers, but producing job creators. That's our
Fantastic.
motto.
The university is producing job creators, not job seekers. Fantastic.